Afternoon. I'm Ward 1 Councilmember Nadeau, Chair of the Committee on Public Works and Operations. Today's Tuesday, February 13th, 2024, and I'm calling to order this hybrid meeting of the committee in room 123 and on the Zoom platform. The time is 2:05 p.m. The hearing is being live streamed at brianneknadeau.com/live. Today's performance oversight hearing is for the Office of the Chief Technology Officer and the Office of Risk Management. The Office of the Chief Technology Officer is the central technology organization of the District of Columbia government. OCTO develops, implements, and maintains the district's technology infrastructure, develops and implements major enterprise applications, establishes and oversees technology policies and standards for the district, provides technology services and support for district agencies, and develops technology solutions to improve services to businesses, residents, and visitors in all areas of district government. OCTO's mission is to direct the strategy, deployment, and management of DC government technology with an unwavering commitment to IT excellence, efficiency, and value for government, residents, businesses, and visitors. We have plenty to discuss today, including OCTO's collaboration with fellow agencies to accomplish initiatives, progress on federally funded grants, cybersecurity issues, and efforts to expand programs that achieve equitable internet access for all. I look forward to discussing this important work with Interim Director Miller. We are also joined today by the Office of Risk Management and Chief Risk Officer Jed Ross. The mission of the Office of Risk Management is to reduce risk to the DC government through risk identification, insurance analysis, and support the district's agencies. ORM is responsible for the facilitation of the Workers' Compensation Program, Risk Prevention and Safety Program, Risk Insurance, and Tort Liability. This afternoon, we'll discuss risk management, the Public Sector Workers' Compensation Program, and insurance requirements for district contractors and grantees. I look forward to hearing from our public witnesses about the important work of both these agencies. With that, we'll begin. Just some reminders on logistics. Witnesses testifying on behalf of an organization will have 5 minutes to provide oral testimony, and all other witnesses will have 3 minutes. In order to ensure we hear from all members of the public, I'll ask that all witnesses stick to their allotted time. All witnesses participating in this hearing via Zoom are currently listed as attendees in the Zoom. When it is your turn to join a panel for testimony, I will call your name and we will extend you an invite to be promoted to the panel. Once you accept that, you'll be able to control your microphone and your camera. And when it's your turn to testify, you may unmute yourself and turn on your camera at that time. For any technical difficulties, you can contact my staff listed as the DC Council Committee on Public Works and Operations, and they will follow up with you. Additionally, if you're having trouble gaining access to the Zoom and you've pre-registered, you can email my team at publicworks@dccouncil.gov, and they will try to resolve your issue. Do not believe that we have been joined by any other council members in the Zoom, just double checking. So now we will turn to our first panel of witnesses, of public witnesses. Panel 1 is Commissioner Josh Jacobson, ANC 1E, William Lightfoot, David Capson, Teresa Wells, David Maloff, Lori Posner, Blanchetta Jones, and Destiny Middlebrooks. When I call your name, please accept the invitation on the Zoom or come forward to the witness table if you are testifying in person. If you're in the Zoom and preparing to testify, please make sure that your name in the Zoom is the same name you used when you registered to testify so that we know to promote you. Sometimes when people sign on to Zoom, they don't realize their name is something different. For example, if your child was using your Zoom for school. Okay. Do we have the panel assembled then? Okay. So we're going to begin with Commissioner Josh Jacobson.
All right, Chair Nadeau, members of the committee and staff members, thank you for this opportunity to testify. My name is Josh Jacobson and I'm the ANC representing SMD 1E06 located in Pleasant Plains. I am testifying on behalf of ANC 1E per resolution passed at a regularly scheduled meeting. I am testifying today on the Broken How Am I Driving program in DC, or HAID. How Am I Driving is a program that helps the Office of Risk Management track driver performance through complaints the district receives about district government drivers. Over the past couple of months, I've received ORM emails for 16 How Am I Driving submissions via FOIA requests. The results of my FOIAs indicate that ORM and other agencies either do not take the complaint seriously, do not have the mechanisms to address complaints, or just aren't releasing the expected information via FOIA. On August 1st, 2023, Alan Wheeler tweeted a request for a How Am I Driving ticket for a vehicle that recklessly drove on Grand Circle at 40 miles per hour and nearly hit him and his dog in a crosswalk. On August 23rd, ORM emailed Sonia Williams, the risk manager for DC's Child and Family Services Agency. ORM followed up with 2 additional emails on September 7th and the 22nd. As of January 9th, there was no additional outreach from ORM to CFSA after the September 22nd email. This matches a pattern I saw with other 311 requests, and there are several problems here that raise questions. First, it took ORM 22 days to follow up with CFSA. On average, it takes ORM 39 days to forward the request to the responsible agency. This seems to indicate that OUC does not automatically forward the request to ORM. It is important to understand what causes this delay, because the longer it takes to receive the feedback, the longer it takes for the employee to correct their actions. 2, How Am I Driving exists so ORM can track driver performance, but it is evident from FOIAs that ORM does not know the responsible driver without a response from the responsible agency. In each email to agencies, ORM asks the agency to respond with the name of the driver at the time of event. And so in those cases where the agency never responds, it doesn't seem like the agency or that ORM knows who the driver is. I recommend the following. First, this committee works with ORM to understand their policies for dealing with these requests. Some of my questions are, first, what is their process for sending these requests to the responsible agency? Second, what are the consequences if the responsible agency never responds? Third, what steps are necessary for ORM to track complaints for responsible drivers without a response from the responsible agency? My second recommendation is for this committee to work with the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee to understand a couple of items from OUC. First, what is OUC's process for sending these requests to ORM? If it is not automated, what would it take to get automation in place? Second, how many How Am I Driving requests have been filed in the past year? My third recommendation for this committee is to ask ORM the following, and I believe ORM might have responded with some of these in their testimony. First is, how many How Am I Driving requests have they acted on? Second, how many have been responded to? And third, what is the breakdown per agency? My fourth recommendation is that the council requires ORM to track the above information on a publicly accessible dashboard. And my last request is that this committee investigate what it would take to help ORM hold dangerous drivers within district government accountable for their actions. Last year marked a 16-year high of death from traffic violence in DC. As of when I wrote this, 5 people had already died, with 3 deaths attributable to hits and runs, and others have died since I wrote this. We need to do more to address the causes of this, and holding dangerous drivers driving government vehicles accountable is an important step in the right direction. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll now hear from David Capson.
Okay, can you hear me okay? All right, thank you. Good afternoon, Chairperson Nadeau. My name is David Capson. I'm testifying on behalf of the Trial Lawyers Association of DC, of which I am a member of the executive committee and will be president of the organization during the 27 and 28 term. I'm also a partner at the law firm Chase & Boscolo, where for the past 13 years, I've represented numerous injured workers throughout the DMV, including in both the public and private sector in the district. I'm here as a representative of the DC TLA, as well as injured workers, to express my support for the Public Sector Injured Workers Equality Amendment Act of 2023, which is a solution to some of the problems that I anticipate folks will be testifying about today. In addition to my testimony, I'm also submitting a letter of support from the TLA DC, which is attached to the written testimony that I uploaded prior to the hearing. The current public sector workers' compensation program in the District of Columbia is irrevocably broken. It's been broken for longer than I've been practicing law. The first and most glaring deficiency in the current system is a massive conflict of interest in every single claim. And that is ORM is a party in every proceeding, each and every proceeding. They're acting both as a legislative body that's promulgating rules and regulations that are beyond the act, and they're also acting as an administrative agency deciding on injured workers' entitlements to rights and benefits. This is a fundamental flaw in the system, and it must be corrected in place of a better system that will allow for fair administration of workers' comp benefits, better access to medical treatment, easier access to the courts when there's a dispute, and the ability to seek and obtain competent legal representation. Right now, and for many years, injured workers in the public sector have not been able to obtain legal representation because competent attorneys know that they cannot help these people given the current state of the law. And unfortunately, we have to turn plenty of folks away. Additionally, ORM's administration of the current system does little to foster the humanitarian purpose of the workers' compensation law, or to allow injured workers in the public sector to have the ability to assert all of the rights available to workers in the private sector, like permanent and total disability benefits, lifetime care for reasonable, necessary, and causally related medical treatment. Fixing a broken system creates a challenging problem. However, with this situation, we have an excellent chance of turning a challenge into an opportunity that leaves both injured workers and the district better off than before the problem existed. The solution starts by taking the ORM conflict out of the equation and by bringing the public sector workers' compensation laws of DC in line with those of the private sector. To do so will give DC government employees equal footing with the private sector when it comes to the administration of workers' compensation in the district. A unification of the law with Bill 25-585 will provide all injured public sector employees fair access to medical treatment and wage replacement benefits following an on-the-job injury. It will reestablish an important social safety net that currently does not exist for injured local government workers in DC. And I'm happy to take any questions that you have. And before I do that, I just want to close by saying I care deeply about the District of Columbia. I want to see it thrive. I want to be part of this movement and turn this challenge into an opportunity to make workers' comp and the system better in DC for everyone. I want to let the City Council know that myself and my colleagues at the TLA DC are ready, willing, and available to help in any way that we can to affect this change in the law. And with that, we respectfully offer that our full support for the Public Sector Injured Workers Equality Amendment Act of 2023. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. We'll now hear from Teresa Wells.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Nadeau. Since 2013, I have been addressing the Office of Risk Management regarding my medical and monetary benefits because the OR system has failed to provide necessary and prompt medical evaluations, treatments, and appropriate monetary benefits in a timely manner and in accordance to treating physicians, respectively. Today, I would like to highlight concerns with the hope that DC Council will overhaul the DC public sector workers' comp for employees who are injured on duty to ensure full medical coverage as needed and appropriate monetary benefits. Number one, at the very minimum, DC workers' comp for public sector should mirror Title I DC workers' compensation for private sector. This would ensure a broader bandwidth in obtaining full coverage, medical services and treatments, and the appropriate monetary benefits. Number two, treating physicians submit medical notes, requests, and recommendations on behalf of the injured government employee that are either not processed in a timely manner, or referred to ORM's selected panelists of physicians that leads to spending more district taxpayers' money to conduct exams such as independent medical evaluations, additional medical evaluations, functional capacity evaluations, and or the issuance of maximum medical improvement ratings that are inappropriate. They are all frequently convoluted, contradictory, biased, missing medical facts, inappropriate for the type of bodily injury, contains misdiagnoses, medically noted as no injury diagnosis, or miscalculations of the notice of retention rights date, which mandates government employees to return to work full duty with no medical resolutions. Thirdly, According to the DC Code 1-623.27, it is extremely difficult to find an attorney to represent injured workers because they have limited ability under the current Title I regulations to fully exercise the law. There are no legal rights to request hearings as needed, only if ORM issues a notice of intent or a notice of determination. And thirdly, they can only be compensated at 20% only after an award for workers' compensation has been determined, granted, and awarded. Lastly, number 4, at times ORM will request injured workers to submit additional medical documentation. The injured government employee must incur out-of-pocket medical expenses for an exam, testing, and/or records that ORM alleges are not reimbursable by the district government. When employing agencies deny reasonable accommodations as requested by the treating physicians, ORM will place an injured worker in a one-year program, vocational rehabilitation, to search for another job with no district job and benefits guaranteed, resulting in the workers' compensation case being stalled and/or closed prematurely. The ORM system for workers' compensation for the public sector is broken. Unless an audit is conducted by a private company, many injured employees that have worked hard and provided a service to the district residents, like myself, will continue to receive partial or extremely delayed medical treatments and will consistently keep petitioning the DC Council to examine this agency and the current regulations set forth. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll now hear from David Maloff.
Good afternoon, council member. Thank you for holding this oversight hearing of an oversight agency. I am David Maloff. I'm a 41-year resident of Ward 2 in the district and proud of it. I'm also the past president of the DC Federation of Citizens Associations, which at that time was an umbrella group of about 24 civic, citizens, and community organizations, neighborhood organizations around the district. I've got 30 years of consulting experience and a good eye over the 17 months that I've been embroiled with the Department of Buildings and its permitting office waywardness. I hesitate to say, but it's I think maybe intentional and unintentional. The hits keep coming with the old DCRA and the new DOB, and people scratch their heads around the city and say, why is that? The issue is that it's very insular. There's a culture problem. There's a management series of issues, and there's a general counsel's office that's more interested in protecting the mismanagement and poor permitting conduct than to worry about the risks to the citizens and to the district. And they must not operate as if the district is an entity unto itself and citizens are secondary or don't matter. So this risk management office, what I'm about to ask for today, I've got 5 things, nothing for the council, ma'am. I've got 5 issues, and I'm asking risk management to participate in a turnkey audit, management and risk audit for the public safety and for the financial integrity of the district of the permitting office of the Department of Buildings. It fits squarely into their mandate, which I won't read here. And also, question 46 in your questionnaire talks about their focus on employees of the district who have a pattern of damaging behaviors, and that they address that with agencies. This is absolutely in their wheelhouse. And I'd like Office of Risk Management to participate with the city administrator. I testified at his oversight a couple of days ago. And also probably with the DC auditor. I don't think Mr. Mendelson and the council probably, I would hope you would not object, but this would not require expensive consulting. It can be done in-house, and it requires that the agency come clean with what everyone knows is a punch list of issues that Mr. Director Hanlon needs to address on the 22nd of February. He was appointed on November, I think, 7th, and on the 9th, he rolled in for his first substantive testimony, and what is non-substantive related to the horrendous, as Mr. Mendelson entitled the hearing. You can pull it up on the council's website, the hearing for the debacle at River East and Grandview. That's about 50 people who got injured at once, and it's probably only public in the Washington Post yesterday because of it's a group, but there are citizens around the city who are suffering, and I would ask that Office of Risk Management participate in such an audit. I would like a telephone call or in-person meeting with the chief risk officer, his general counsel, who's supposed to work with over the tort management, the general counsels in other agencies, and the tort program manager. I would ask that the DMOI and the city administrator participate in an audit or lead it. It need not be the Office of Risk Management. And I call on the general counsel, Mr. Kranick, to work directly with Mr. Adams at the Mayor's Office of Legal Counsel to counsel the wayward
Mr.
DOD
Malouf.
general counsel. And finally, I call on Mr. Hanlon to get specific.
We're almost a minute over, so I'm
Thank
going
you.
to stop you there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Sorry.
No problem. I understand it's an important issue. Feel free to
Grateful.
make sure we have everything in writing as well. Next, we'll hear from Blanchetta Jones.
Good afternoon, council member. My name is Blanchetta Jones, and I'm expressing my dissatisfaction with the Office of Risk Management. I was injured on February 22nd, 2010, while working with the Department of Parks and Recreation. I have still not recovered, and I believe the public sector workers' compensation program hostility has played a major role in delaying my recovery. My right shoulder, my left shoulder was injured in 2010, along with my left leg. But the program refused to accept it. Only years later, in 2015, that I managed to get a judge to rule in my favor on the issues about my right shoulder. They fought against it because they said it was not a part of my upper back. Even after the judge ruled in my favor, it still took the program 4 to 5 years to pay me the money they owed. I had multiple surgeries on these injuries, and my doctor are currently requesting another one to my right shoulder. Then he would start treatment on my left shoulder, but the program would not authorize or pay for my treatment. This is the second time I've been without income since 2012 through 2015, and now 2019 to present. And I still have not had a hearing because I had trouble finding a lawyer. I had trouble meeting all my deadlines, many of which did not make sense to me. I'm asking the council to change the system. ORM is looking out for its own interests, not the interests of the injuries, workers, and not the interests of justice. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Now, unless Lori Posner has joined us in the Zoom under another name, and if that's the case, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll turn to our in-person witnesses. So if you are speaking in person regarding ORM, please make sure you join us at the witness table. We'll start with Miss Destiny Middlebrooks. Make sure to push the button until the red light turns on. There you go.
Okay. Is this good?
That's great.
Okay. Today, I'm highlighting inefficiency, lack of care, and unprofessionalism from the Office of Risk Management, specifically the Public Workers Compensation Program. Imagine if your mother, sister, or maybe an adult child was involved in an accident on the job and sustained traumatic injuries. Once evaluated, a doctor referred them to therapy to manage said injury. Could you imagine waiting 15 to 20 days for a workers' compensation program to issue you an authorization while agonizing in pain? While this sounds absurd, this is only a glimpse into my experience with the DC District of Columbia Public Sector Workers' Compensation Program, which I will refer to work comp for the remainder of the testimony. During my initial intake, I was often subjected to inappropriate, unprofessional comments from my claims examiner. This claims examiner, who was not a medical professional, often made subjective comments about the nature of my injury and my current state. Asking questions outside of standard protocol, like how many jobs have I had since college? And when I asked her to clarify why, she said, just because of work experience. We want to ensure if you have already been conditioned to know what it means to be at work. Committee, I've waited 15 days plus for authorizations. I filled out copious amount of paperwork for justifications. I've CC'd doctors from from my doctor's office personnel, and have filled communication gaps that nurse case managers and claim examiners are paid to fulfill. The workers' compensation program is quite knowledgeable about what they cannot do without authorization, but repeatedly fails in their ability to communicate efficiently. I would also like to raise concern about the current list of doctors authorized by the program. I've never been offered a doctor who actually is located in DC. I'd like to name a few locations where I have been though. Riverdale Park, Maryland, Silver Spring, Maryland, Hyattsville, Maryland, North Englewood, Maryland, and most recently, Baltimore, Maryland, for appointment on February 20th. I've been told to report to my appointment in Baltimore with little explanation. And when requested to see a doctor in DC, I was met with an empty threat, quote, that should I not attend without due cause, then I would place my workers' compensation benefits in jeopardy. One of many appointments, maybe about 50 since August 2nd, the day of my injury. Why would the government as District of Columbia be sending me to Baltimore without explanation? Why aren't we using more medical professionals in the region's top performing networks, such as MedStar? Committee, Councilmember Nadeau, I urge you to facilitate a collection of testimonies from DC government employees, both current and past experiences. I'm deeply concerned about employees who may not be as knowledgeable about their rights, aren't as computer literate, and face other challenges that prevent them from receiving proper and timely treatment. I cannot be alone as a victim of these inefficiencies, lack of care, and unprofessionalism from the work comp program. These behaviors threatens the well-being of injured government employees and needs to be audited and investigated. Is this how the government of Washington, D.C. treats its employees? Councilmember Nadeau, may I follow up with your office regarding these concerns? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll now hear from Patricia Price. Push the circle. There you go.
Hello, committee and everyone here. Someone must have heard my cries because I have been going through a great deal with the Office of Risk Management. I have to stay calm because I suffer from severe panic attacks. So I'm going to be talking real slow because it keeps me calm, okay? All right. Since my traumatic injury on September the 15th, 2021, this office and the employees have been trying to undermine my injury and pretend that what happened to me really did not happen to me. Well, my injury is real, and I am living proof of it every day of what me and my family have to endure. I have been diagnosed with chronic post-traumatic stress disorder. Some people call it PTSD, and chronic anxiety as a result of being viciously attacked. That is not something that I went out to seek and to happen to me. I am not the same person. My life has been turned upside down. I have so many sleepless nights. I am in so much pain. My panic attacks are constant and frequent. And as I said, I have to stay calm because I don't know when a panic attack may arise. They can last for minutes, they can last for hours. I have been in the doctor's office and I have had a full-blown panic attack where my husband had to be called, and not my doctor, but the other doctor threatened to call the psych ward to admit me because I was so out of control. This is not, and my husband had to come get me. I have been enduring a great deal of unfair treatment, abuse of authority, retaliation, bullying, and disrespect from the Office of Risk Management. I have filed 4 complaints with the Office of Risk Management. My first one was for medical care to the Chief Risk Officer on March the 4th, 2022. My second one was the removal of a claims examiner on Friday, September the 16th, 2022. My next one was termination of disability benefits of July the 11th, 2023. My last one I filed was medical care to be reinstated for mental health therapy to the Chief Risk Management Officer on Friday, January the 12th, 2024. Now, this particular complaint, I am very appalled because Jed Ross, who is the director, chose to take my complaint that I filed on January the 12th and turn it over to the person who was listed in that complaint, which is Jennifer Onick, the program administrator, for her to respond. That is a total violation of my rights. I have been going through so much with these particular claims examiner. The first one I had was Shanae Huges, and that's spelled Pouges. She's a claims examiner. And this horrified one, Michelle Parsons, Parsons, she's a claims examiner. That's the one that I had to file the complaint on because she did so much. I mean, I don't even see why this woman still has a job.
Ms. Price?
Oh,
I
okay.
certainly don't want to rush you, but we are a couple minutes over time now, and I'm wondering if we could also have a copy of that in writing?
I have everything in writing, and I would like to meet with your office as well. I have everything here, this whole folder.
That's
It's
wonderful.
for you.
Okay.
It's for your office.
Wonderful. Thank you. And we're going to move to questions for this panel. So you can feel free to speak up in that round as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. So for this panel, we're going to go both to the folks on the Zoom and in the room here. My first question is for Commissioner Jacobson. Thank you for bringing this important issue to my attention and for your thoughtful recommendations. I am concerned by your testimony, so I'm planning to dive into this issue with ORM this afternoon. Of the 16 How Am I Driving cases that you received information on, how many were resolved by ORM and what were the resolutions?
So since I wrote that testimony, I heard back on 4 more, so it's more about 20, and of the 20, 2 are resolved in some way by ORM. One of them was the agency claiming that they weren't parked in front of a fire hydrant, but if you look at the photo, the vehicle is clearly parked in front of a fire hydrant. And then a second one was someone disagreeing with whether or not they were recklessly driving on Georgia Avenue at the time that their plate was documented in the complaint. So 2 out of 20 isn't great. I also have a couple
and
of
those
instances.
things that you just described, you're considering resolved?
Yes, those are resolved in some sense of the word. I don't think that those are good responses, but those are the instances where I have documentation that the agency actually responded to ORM. In all the other cases, it's just a thread of 3 emails where ORM is asking the agency for updates and never gets an update and then just stops pursuing it at that point. I did have a couple of examples where I FOIA'd ORM for the particular service request like I had been doing for all the other ones, and they said that they did not have any service requests under that number, which makes me wonder if these aren't being forwarded appropriately from OUC. And so that's why I flagged that portion in my testimony as well.
And Okay, so that's helpful, and we'll follow up as well. Thank you. So we had a number of witnesses who talked about their own personal experiences with workers' compensation. So I wanted to open this part up. And first just say thank you to all of you for sharing your experiences. For those of you who have attempted to secure an attorney to represent you, what has that experience been like for you?
Well, it has really been hard finding an attorney to represent you because a lot of attorneys, as you've heard testimony, will not touch the cases. And the Office of Risk Management knows that. So that is why they treat people so unfairly.
Just echoing that as well. A lot of attorneys wants to hear DC government. It's pretty much it's very different. It's present challenges, really.
Ms. Wells?
One of the issues is that because it's public sector, the difference is that private sector can request a hearing at any given time, but for public sector, you can only request a hearing unless a notice of intent or a notice of determination is issued. And when you go to seek an attorney for public sector, part of the issue is that they don't get paid. So one, because of the way the laws are, they can't fully legally exercise your rights because of the way the laws are written. And secondly, they only get 20% of the award, but that's only after an award has been granted. So all of the legal work that they do prior, they're not able to bill you, which means that they don't get paid and they can't fully represent you because of the regulations. So it's a dichotomy. It's unfortunate that I've called numerous attorneys, and even with the one that I did have, the laws, because of the way the laws are, I don't think that particular attorney knew all the things that go into trying to represent someone. So it really didn't work out for me for that particular attorney, but they're all saying the same thing.
Mr. Napson, I see you turned your your camera on. I was going to come to you a little later on this, but feel free to jump in if there's something you want to add on your side of it.
Yes, thank you. I think Miss Wells was very well spoken in her testimony and made a couple other good points. From my perspective as a lawyer who helps people with these types of cases or in public sector and ends up turning people away. And before I even get into this, I'll say that I know Miss Patricia Price. I represented her before in a private sector case. And in fact, our office had to say to her, I'm sorry, we can't help you with this public sector case. And we've done that for lots of people that we've helped over the years. The issue is not about the attorney's fees. It's about not being able to pursue the claim through the court system when a dispute arises, which happens often in workers' comp cases when there are questions about whether treatment's causally related or whether it's reasonable or necessary, or whether there's a dispute about someone's disability status. And unsophisticated people who don't speak the language of workers' compensation are really in the wilderness without the help of an attorney. And attorneys have to turn these folks away because we are literally spinning our wheels with the way the law is currently situated with the notice of determination or notice of intent issue. We can't get into court if there's a dispute. So we have to wait for the Office of Risk Management to issue these documents, which they know they don't have to issue, and things get stalled for forever. I even have a case from, I don't remember the date of injury. I mean, it's long ago. It's just like the folks that testified, they're more than a decade old. But in 2017, Office of Risk Management issued a notice of determination accepting a total knee replacement for a client. And then for 7 years, they've refused to actually issue the authorization for her to get that procedure done, even though they issued the document saying that she could have the procedure done. And now how could we get to court? There's nothing to get to court over to enforce that. And then if you get into court and you get an order ORM kind of still thumbs their nose at it, and it's not as enforceable as orders are in the private sector. So this is an area where I'm so happy that the spotlight is being shined on this, and it's time for us all to get together and change. And I'm happy to stick around for other questions. I just wanted to make that point since I thought it was germane to the question of the injured workers who testified.
Thank you. And to our workers, some of you mentioned your experience with filing complaints. Have any of the others that didn't mention that specifically raised complaints to ORM, and what type of response have you received? I don't have in front of me who did and who didn't, so I don't know if you want me to call on anyone specific, but. Ms. Wells, go ahead. Thank you.
I've had numerous claims examiners, at least 5 or 6, but maybe 2 or 3 years ago, prior to having surgery, I did have a claims examiner, and I had to end up requesting another examiner because the process was being delayed. That was supposed to be taken out of work, and I had to wait for them to give me the authorization to leave work and be put on workers' comp. So they tend to go through a lot of claims examiners. And even with the present one that I have, she has not been responsive. She doesn't respond to any emails. Even when you submit it to the supervisor, he doesn't respond to any emails either. And you have to go through the program administrator, Jennifer Arnick, and then I have to send it up to Jed Ross, or I have to petition to the DC Council. So it's just a lot of red tape when people are in agony and have an injury and trying to get help so that they can either return to work or get full disability, partial disability, whatever the circumstance is.
Thank you so much. And while I have you, Ms. Wells, can you tell us more about your experience in the vocational rehab program?
Oh, yes. So one of the treating physician, I was being treated by a surgeon, and then ORM decided that I needed to go to another doctor. And this particular doctor decided he wanted to give me a maximum medical rating, which was inappropriate at the time. And so he said, oh, go to work, and you need a reasonable accommodation. And so when they went back to the employing agency denied reasonable accommodations. They said they wouldn't provide one. So ORM decided, they made a decision that they wanted to put me in a one-year vocational rehabilitation program. After that 1 year, you have no district job and you have no benefits. So for 1 year, they give you a counselor that you meet with every week to look for another job. Well, the type of injury that I have, it's a challenge to go get another job because of the type of injury that I have, but that's what you have to do if you want to get your benefits. So after 1 year, you are then on your own if you have not received a job. And so for my experience, many of these people that were in the group that I was in, they were having difficulty finding a job because of the nature of what they do and the type of injury that they have. So I think that program too needs to be overhauled. You're sending people to a vocational rehab program to look for a job, but with that bodily injury, are they able to get a job and sustain a job? And what happens after 1 year? I think the state of Maryland gives you a 2-year program, but DC only gives you 1 year. And I'm, at that time I was still waiting for treatment. Like my surgeon had requested therapy back in 2022. It's now 2024, and I just got an authorization for therapy.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Mr. Capson, one other question. Do public worker comp programs in other jurisdictions have the same issues that DC does?
I couldn't tell you about all 50 states, but in our neighbors don't have this problem. Maryland and Virginia treat everyone exactly the same, and that's what we should do here in the district.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much to this panel. I really appreciate your testimony. We're now going to move to our public witnesses testifying about the Office of the Chief Technology Officer. We will begin, our panel includes Robert Vincent Branham, Taylor Terry, Trudy Peterson, and Bill Rice. When I call your name, please accept the invitation to be promoted in Zoom or come to the witness table in the room. Okay, Mr. Branham, you may begin.
Good afternoon. Thank you for my,
1 second, Mr. Rice.
Oh.
Mr. Branham will go first.
oh, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Greetings and salutations, Chairwoman Nadeau. I am Robert Vincent Branham. I am a former ANC Commissioner and President Emeritus of the DC Federation of Civic Associations, and I'm glad to share this afternoon with my brother, David, from the DC Federation of Citizens Associations. I want to thank you for holding this public hearing. I am pleased to appear before this committee to comment on the performance of the Office of the Chief Technology Officer. When I first registered to testify before this committee, I was preparing to oppose the nomination of Dr. Christopher Rodriguez for the position of Chief Technology Officer. I am pleased the mayor has dutifully withdrawn his nomination. Madam Chair, I take this opportunity to bring 2 points to your attention. First, I'm a board member of the DC Open Government Coalition, which has a lawsuit against OCTO as outlined in the committee documents. Second, cybersecurity is gaining attention around the country. Private citizens, businesses, and government agencies have come under internet cyber attack through malware. Most significantly and recently, the DC Board of Elections web host system was breached. While the Board of Elections has attempted to assure district residents their personal information was not invaded, there has not been a statement from OCTO to detail its efforts in response. It is also significant the Board of Elections has not indicated any agency assistance from OCTO regarding this web data incursion. There is not any information provided by OCTO which outlines any interagency governmental coordination to help maintain a secure internet Wi-Fi cyber experience. In response to the committee's question, number 50 on page 24, regarding the Wi-Fi hotspots, OCTO responded a total of installed outdoor Wi-Fi devices of 810 at 382 unique locations. I contend this response should be more expansive to detail the locations of the Wi-Fi devices or hotspots as outdoors or indoors. OCTO's response should also clarify the specific whether the devices, Wi-Fi devices, whether they are Wi-Fi devices or Wi-Fi hotspots. There is a difference between a Wi-Fi device and a Wi-Fi hotspot. Let me close this with this testimony. The internet Wi-Fi cyber travels that many residents undertake will never be 100% risk-free. And also, artificial intelligence has the potential to advance our website experience. However, OCTO must prepare and inform district residents and district government employees of the increased dangers imposed by fake or phony websites pretending to offer information and official services. This is particularly important as Americans get ready to prepare and participate in the elections of its leaders. we must all be vigilant, and OCTO should be a leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Branham. Ms. Peterson?
Thank you very much, Chairwoman. For the past several years, the Archives Advisory Group of the Council has testified before the OCTO oversight hearing and expressed our concern that OCTO was not actively engaging in the planning of the new DC Archives building. Well, I'm here to say some nice things this year. First of all, we have heard testimony now from the state archivist at the oversight hearing for the Office of the Secretary, who said that they are working actively with OCTO, and they're planning both the equipment that needs to be procured and also the installation of that equipment in the new archives building. This is exactly what we hoped would happen, and we're pleased to be here to tell you it's happening. The second thing is that OCTO has also supported the preservation and acquisition of the digital preservation system, which is called Preservica, a state-of-the-art system which gives the Office of Public Records the tool it needs to preserve the permanently valuable electronic records of the district. We look forward to the development of regular transfers of digital records from OCTO's holdings, with, of course, the agreement of the creating agency, to the archives for permanently valuable records, where permanent valuable records can be preserved for us all. The future of the archives of the District of Columbia absolutely depends on the prompt professional preservation of the electronic records of the district. Those created in the past, over the past 20 plus years, when the district has been using electronic records, those created today, and those created in the future. And that we are very pleased that OCTO is taking a positive approach to our history. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. We'll now turn to Mr. Rice. Make sure you hit the circle. Yep.
Thank you, Chairman Nadeau. Good day. I am Bill Rice, testifying for myself. I am a longtime advocate for state-of-the-art DC archives and for comprehensive records management for the DC government. My involvement goes back to the early home rule days when the current outmoded facility was set up at 1300 Naylor Court Northwest under Mayor Barry. I am an active member of the Friends of the DC Archives and participate in the activities of the Council's Archives Advisory Group and fully support the plan for a new DC Archives at UDC to replace Building 41, if you happen to know that enormous building on campus. I want to digress for a quick moment and bring you back to your opening statement, where I don't remember the exact quote, but you went through a list of agencies and responsibilities, and I kept listening for the DC Archives, and I did not hear it. So along with my colleague, Trudy Peterson, we want you to add the DC Archives as one of the central activities, important activities of OCTO. I will go on. I thank the Council for creating the Archives Advisory Group and for this oversight hearing on the Office of the Chief Technology Officer. This is a unique project in two ways. It involves a great deal of coordination among the Department of General Services, UDC, and OCTO, all under the direction of the DC Secretary, which includes the State Archivist and Office of Public Records. And two, to succeed, as Trudy Peterson just described, a state-of-the-art facility, it must have cutting-edge digital technology with OCTO involved from design to construction to operation. And as I said, I fully endorse Trudy Peterson's testimony today, especially her reporting, as I quote, that OCTO has effectively supported the Office of the Secretary, Office of Public Records during the past year and that OCTO is taking a positive approach to our history. I recently had the opportunity for a brief exchange with Stephen Miller, the interim chief technology officer, and he certainly knew of the project and seemed quite receptive to the points that this is a unique undertaking, with OCTO having a key role from design through operation. Closing, I want to commend our state archivist, Dr. Lopez Matthews, for upgrading the existing operations at Naylor Court and his work with DGS, UDC, and OCTO to clear the way for our new state-of-the-art DC archives at UDC. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, all of you, for your testimony. Mr. Branham, I heard you mention the importance of more robust outreach to the community by OCTO regarding cybersecurity. How would you recommend they improve their outreach efforts?
By simply informing, making available real hotspots across the city. I've long advocated that the web experience for district residents should be free and open, and I think the move in that direction would be helpful. And the other is that to list where these hotspots are, and to clarify, are we talking about hotspots or are we talking about Wi-Fi devices? The two are not the same. You cannot have a hotspot without a Wi-Fi technology, but you can have the Wi-Fi technology and it not be a hotspot. So when you're in your question to OCTO, you specifically ask about Wi-Fi hotspots. They responded with Wi-Fi devices, which is a different response and technological active action that needs to be clarified. It needs to be clarified. And where are these hotspots?
Thank you for that. And did you want to say more about the outreach? I was asking about the you mentioned the importance of more robust outreach by the community to the community by OCTO. Well,
the OCTO is mission is to provide the technology architecture and be sure that it's a safe experience, and that can only come if OCTO is technology activities mirror what its claimed is doing. I feel that OCTO is moving in the right direction. It just needs to be more robust, and it also needs to be more open and transparent. The Board of Elections website, web hosting invasion, OCTO was silent. OCTO was silent, and it did not come out with any kind of statement in support of what to help it was doing to assist the Board of Elections in securing its data and its website. And neither did the Board of Elections even reference any assistance from OCTO as to what it was doing. It may have been doing it behind the scenes, but there's no public reflection that OCTO was actively engaged in what's happening. That internet security experience has to be clear, particularly when we're getting in close to the elections and people are trying to come up with ways to vote, and we're talking about artificial intelligence. OCTO needs to be a bit more robust in its public relations and its public outreach as to what it is doing to engage and to assure and protect the citizens against artificial intelligence fraudulent activity. Because other governments, other states have been impacted negatively by people who invade their architecture. Houston, Boston. I mean, you're aware of some of those states have been impacted, and we should do what OCTO needs to say. It hasn't happened to that degree here, And this is what we're doing to give the public the kind of confidence moving forward that everything they're doing and is safe.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And to Ms. Peterson and Mr. Rice, I was very pleased to hear that about OCTO's collaboration with the Office of the Secretary and the Office of Public Records on the Archives project. I'm glad that's working better. Ms. Peterson, you mentioned in your written testimony that the next step would be regular transfers of digital records from OCTO into the archives. When is that set to begin?
Well, that's a question for the archives and OCTO, not for me, to be honest. But we would assume that it can begin as soon as all the equipment is established. You really don't have to wait for the new building to be open. You can begin those transfers early. It's a very technical process, and starting it soon allows you to learn some things about how the process is going to work, so you can get to a regular transfer.
Wonderful. When would you like it to begin?
Oh, about 15 years ago.
Oh, sure.
No, seriously. Electronic records are pretty fragile. And we know that not all electronic records produced by the district have to be maintained forever. It's a small subset of them that has to be. But that subset really needs care, and it needs care immediately. Make sure that there is no loss of signal, that there is no corruption of signal, and then obviously to make it possible for the citizens to access it. So all those things need to happen. And, we're moving in the right direction. That's the good news for the city.
Great.
May
Sure,
may
Mr.
I,
Rice.
Council member, would you care to, speaking of preservation of records, would you care to join Councilmember Fruman and Councilmember Parker in committing to you donating your records whenever you leave the council to?
Sure.
Okay, I'll put you on the list.
I've already got my scrapbooks going, so if you could digitize those, that
please.
would be great.
Oh,
Stop by my office on the way out. You'll see the first term scrapbook. It's
oh, really?
it's an attraction. Let me tell you.
I will. Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for the invitation. I look forward to working with you on that someday when the time comes.
When the time comes.
Thank you. Thanks to everybody on this panel. Truly appreciate your testimony. Hey, that concludes our public witnesses for today. So we will now turn to our government witnesses. We'll now be joined by Interim Director of OCTO, Stephen Miller. And Mr. Miller, before you begin your testimony, I'll have you raise your hand. And so come on forward and get set up. Anybody who will testify with you will also have sworn in. Okay. Okay, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you are about to give to the Committee on Public Works and Operations is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Wonderful. Director, you may begin your testimony when you are ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairperson Nadeau, members of the Committee on Government Operations and staff. I'm Stephen Miller, the Interim Chief Technology Officer for DC Government. I am honored to testify today on behalf of Mayor Muriel Bowser and her administration regarding the performance of the Office of the Chief Technology Officer, or OCTO, during fiscal years 2023 and 2024 to date. Over the past year, I am proud to say that Team OCTO has not skipped a beat. In fact, we have had an extremely productive and innovative year with major product and policy launches, sweeping modernization and cybersecurity efforts, and are among national leaders in digital equity and connectivity efforts. I am excited to share many of those accomplishments with you today. But before I get started, all of what I'll share with you today is only possible due to the dedication of our staff who work nonstop, day and night, and often through weekends to keep the machinery of the DC government churning. Much of the work isn't flashy and is often completed without fanfare, but it's critical work. I'd also like to directly thank our executive team, several of whom are here today and others watching online. Carol Harrison, Henry Lofton, Tayseen Farouk, Todd Smith, Sunil Cherakuri, and Mike Rupert for their leadership and support. And I thank Mayor Bowser for her trust in me to keep our momentum going. One of the reasons for our progress and focus is our adoption of the IT strategic plan, which anyone can explore at techplan.dc.gov. The plan was originally launched pre-pandemic and refreshed in early fiscal year 23, adding new milestones and revamping how we engage with our customers. The updated Unleash the Possible roadmap keeps OCTO laser focused on the delivery of products and services as we continue to build our aspiring engagement culture of the OCTO way. One of our major product launches in FY23 was the business portal in a close partnership with the Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection, or DLCP, and several other agencies involved in the licensing process. In fact, tomorrow, Valentine's Day, will be the 1-year anniversary of the portal. Highlights from the first year include entrepreneurs and business owners have logged into business.dc.gov more than 12,000 times to start or manage their businesses. More than 1,450 entrepreneurs have followed their dreams by starting the business licensing process in the portal. More than 51 completed the business licensing process in the portal, and another 160 are about 75% complete. Usage of the one-stop business.dc.gov grew an average of 22.3% a month in the first year of operation. That was a leap of 717 users in our first month to more than 13,000 users this month, February of 2024. As we promised at the kickoff with business leaders and advocates, we would continue to make improvements and share them as we go. We've had 5 major new feature releases, which you can view at beta.business.dc.gov/release notes. And the momentum is only picking up speed. We continue to work with DLCP to shift all 125 professional licensing application processes to the portal, while we continue to add and expand new features to the existing options. I want to thank DLCP Director Tiffany Crow for her support, her friendship, and leadership on this critical project, and to make it as easy as possible to start and maintain a business in the district. We are also in the planning stages for a family and resident portal and look forward to sharing those updates with the committee in the coming months. Another big milestone is our award-winning tech enablement team, which will celebrate its 2nd year in April. As we have mentioned before, we are always pretty good at rolling out new technology, but weren't always great at teaching people how to use it to improve the way they work. This team has changed all of that. In fiscal year 23, the team trained 5,200 staff via courses and webinars in how to better use Microsoft 365, QuickBase, Seamless Docs, Box, and many more enterprise platforms. The team also conducted agency-specific large-scale training to show how to use these tools with tasks specific to those agencies. And the best part is feedback from post-training surveys show an average satisfaction score of 8.8 out of 10 in the fiscal year. The tech enablement team is also responsible for curating self-help articles at octohelps.dc.gov, which is meant to empower staff to do simple things like reset their PeopleSoft or DCNet password without calling or submitting a ticket to OCTO. In FY23 through Q1 in FY24, those articles have been viewed more than 30,800 times. In addition to the self-help articles, octohelps.dc.gov, our IT management system, or ITSM, allows OCTO and a growing number of other DC government agencies to track service requests, define and enforce service level agreements, and follow up and receive feedback from customers. Since implementation, the system has received and supported the management of more than 202,000 requests. These requests have included IT service requests, that's the majority of them, security requests such as international travel, onboarding requests, and other service catalog items. Best of all, 96% reported they were satisfied with their experience. OCTO has worked with the Department of Human Resources to deploy a module specific to human resource functions for benefits, retirement, and more. Modules for asset management, configuration management, and other IT functions are actively being planned for deployment. Our State Broadband and Digital Equity Office has had an extremely busy past 18 months as they work tirelessly to get residents connected to broadband, to train residents, especially seniors, on how to get the internet, how the internet can improve their lives. And also, we released a 5-year action plan and state digital equity draft plan. The latter are critical requirements to begin to receive federal broadband equity access and deployment and state digital equity planning grant funds. A few highlights for fiscal year 23. We achieved one of the highest rates of adoption, 56% of the FCC's Affordable Connectivity Program, which provides free internet access. That rate is 16% higher than the national average. OCTO held 56 Tech 101 courses to teach basic tech skills, mainly targeting seniors. OCTO was awarded a $5 million grant to support the development of our Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, that's BEAD for short, the grant application from the National Telecommunications and Information Administration. We also received a $500,000 grant to support the development of our digital equity plan. We directly engaged with 300 residents and businesses to support the development of our digital equity plan. That was both online and in person. OCTO's first community internet program partner, WeLink, tripled their serviceable area to include more than 10,000 households since March of 2022. On May 4th, 2023, OCTO held an internet service provider broadband summit attended by more than 100 service providers and partners to learn more about that CIP program. Artificial intelligence is poised to dramatically transform the landscape of every industry, and OCTO is at the forefront of finding a safe way to harness the power of AI in government services and how DC government and the people we serve can benefit from this new technology. Just last week, I was proud to join Mayor Bowser at the Microsoft Innovation and Policy Center for the signing of the mayor's order to define the artificial intelligence value statement and strategic plan to make sure DC is at the forefront of using AI to deliver city services that are responsive, efficient, and proactive, and that we are using it in a responsible way that aligns with our DC values. You can see the details at techplan.dc.gov/AI values. The order does the following. It defines DC's AI values, which will serve as the cornerstone of implementing AI solutions in DC government. These values will be weighed whenever AI solutions are proposed within DC government, and only solutions congruent with all 6 values will be adopted. DC's AI values are clear benefit to the people, safety and equity, accountability, transparency, sustainability, and privacy and cybersecurity. We're establishing an advisory group on AI values alignment comprised of public and government members to ensure public oversight of the DC government's AI adoption efforts. The advisory group will monitor agency AI adoption efforts and advise the mayor on how well DC government has done in promoting and adhering to DC's AI values. We're convening an AI task force of government personnel to work with agencies to produce key governance policies, procedures, and documents throughout 2024, and to begin a 3-year process of helping every agency develop specific AI strategic plans. The task force will be overseen and organized by OCTO. Finally, we set AI benchmarks for DC government by imposing a schedule of deadlines through fiscal year 2024. For the creation of core components and planning documents that will shape DC's AI strategic plan. These include plans for AI training at the agency level and processes for ensuring privacy and cybersecurity are preserved as AI technology is deployed at agencies. We are among the first dozen states to implement such a plan nationally. Our partner, let's talk a little bit about dc.gov. Our partner, a longtime DC-based CBE, has done extensive research using data from our public outreach efforts last summer, which included 1,230 survey responses and 6 live feedback sessions, which includes analytics, user testing, user journey mapping, resident and business interviews, and a review of other city websites nationwide. The research and analysis phases are complete, and we anticipate receiving design options, a brand manual and key page wireframes in the next 45 days. In anticipation of receiving the designs, we are getting a new statement of work prepared for an architect to begin working with our team to set up the new Drupal 10 environment based on the final deliverables, and a development firm to begin building in coordination with our team the prototypes for additional feedback and eventual beta launch of the site. FY25 will be focused on shifting more content from agency sites to the new dc.gov. We anticipate having a working beta site ready by Q4 of this fiscal year. Another exciting web project we're working on in partnership with the Office of the Advisory Neighborhood Commissions is building out a network of 47 websites, one for the office and 46 ANC websites. This is going to bring equity to a smorgasbord of websites that currently make up this community. As the technical prowess and resources vary widely among the 46 ANC offices, this new network will bring equity and commonality across the board. We are proud to be partnering on this work. Our data initiatives, Washington, D.C. is committed to harnessing the power of our data to be a data-driven decision-making city. Through strategic collaboration with the focus on people, processes, and technology in our government, data will inform us to ensure we continue to make equitable progress across gender, race, ethnicity, and ward. In fiscal year 23, OCTO added about 40 additional data sets to its enterprise open data inventory, bringing the total to 2,204, up from 2,164 data sets in the previous fiscal year. In FY23, OCTO added racial and ethnic data to dozens of critical data sets to support the work of the Mayor's Office on Racial Equality. In fiscal year 23, our cybersecurity team continued to expand and improve our cybersecurity hygiene, especially by reducing the number of spam and phishing emails that reach end users' inboxes using new filtering software. Phishing is well known to be the main reason for cyber incidents. But it's not just software and emails. We also retired more than 540 servers that were at the end of life and were no longer secure. We have also improved security by more aggressively curating those inboxes, laptops, and mobile devices that are no longer used. OCTO has also streamlined endpoint management to create and implement a more secure provisioning processes for new devices that dramatically improve the time from device provisioning to staff productivity. What used to take hours is now done in minutes. In Q1 of fiscal year 24, OCTO, using the state and local cybersecurity grant program from the CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and the DC Homeland Security and Emergency Management Agency, HSEMA, we launched the DC Cybersecurity Planning Committee, which is developing plans to implement a technology cybersecurity risk management framework, which will help DC to be better prepared to detect and respond to cyber incidents and allow us to be more proactive in implementing new technologies more efficiently and securely. Within the internal services cluster, we supported several key internal policies and priorities, including in partnership with the Department of Human Resources, DCHR, and the Mayor's Office of Innovation, we launched a new careers.dc.gov to improve the job seeker's experience in searching for careers in DC government. The new website highlights high priority positions, upcoming hiring events, and makes the process more transparent. We also work closely with DCHR on the rollout of both the sexual harassment and telework policies to track acknowledgements, disclosures, and more. In FY23, our central licensing and contracts team focused on engaging agency CIOs to gain awareness of new and large technology solutions in the ideation phase and assist with the planning and support of the procurement process effectively and efficiently. These efforts assist in the collaboration with agencies to leverage existing contract vehicles to acquire products timely, to navigate supply chain challenges, and to maximize available discounts. One of the things we're most proud of is our continued focus on developing a sustainable tech talent pipeline and creating paths for our entry-level technicians to grow and thrive in their careers. In fiscal year 23, we launched our OCTO World program, which gave our help desk Tier 1 technicians the opportunity to be detailed to other OCTO programs, including cybersecurity, server operations, network operations, and email management to get exposed to new, higher-level technologies and processes. Based on these experiences, the technicians were motivated to seek certifications and education to make themselves viable candidates should positions become available. Based on the extremely positive feedback from both managers and participants, we plan to do this again in Q3 and Q4 of this fiscal year. These programs run during the summer months due to the dip in help desk demand while students are out of school. Another exciting program is OCTO and the Department of Employment Services partnered to give the opportunity for up to 5 graduates, all DC residents, of the DC Infrastructure Academy to gain real-world on-the-job experience at OCTO. The internship consists of 16 weeks of paid hands-on training for 5 Cisco Certified Network Administrator Program graduates, CCNA for short. Over the course of the internship, trainees gained valuable field experience focused on the district's DCNet network, voice over IP services, and wireless infrastructure. This is a win-win partnership for DC residents and DC government. Our DCNet network traverses more than 750 miles throughout the district, connecting nearly 400 district facilities across neighborhoods in all 8 wards. We want more and more of our staff to come from these same neighborhoods. We'll host the graduation of the first cohort of interns this week on Thursday at our DCNet location. You're welcome to join us, Chairperson. The second cohort will begin on March 11th, and they will intern as Tier 2 help desk technicians. In the future, we will seek to expand the program, but we're very proud to have made this happen. In fiscal year 24, we will be participating in the new HBCU Public Service Program, a groundbreaking partnership with Howard University and the University of the District of Columbia. The program will create a seamless pipeline for HBCU graduates to enter public service roles, ensuring DC government benefits from the brightest and most passionate talent. We have dedicated 3 full-time cybersecurity positions to this innovative program. With these new programs, along with our dedication and commitment to the Marion Barry Summer Youth Employment Program, we will have a year-round cycle of new talent moving through OCTO. In conclusion, thank you for the opportunity to share our accomplishments, Chairperson. As I hope you can see, we have been busy, and that's exactly how we like to be. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director, for your testimony. Would you like to introduce your colleague as well?
I'd love to. This is Henry Lofton, our Deputy Chief Technology Officer for IT Operations, Infrastructure, all things OCTO, really.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Director, can you say more about what you call the OCTO way?
The OCTO way. So, the OCTO way is all about, finding the right way to move forward with the right technology at the right time. It's working with agencies to get them to understand what's available on an enterprise level, the kind of support that we have within OCTO, the subject matter expertise that's available. It's not necessarily us coming in and saying, we're going to run your project. It's us coming in and say, let us help you run your project. Let us find the right technology the right way. We want to make sure we're doing something that also aligns similar to those AI values, that it's sustainable, that it's accountable, that's supportable, that it takes privacy and cybersecurity into account.
Thank you. What key vacant positions are currently your top hiring priorities?
So we have an associate CTO position that's out there now. We have positions, I think we're filling in a state broadband officer position now. That's not, I wouldn't consider that vacant. We're actually getting ready for that hire to come in. We have some program level staff for managing projects like My School DC. Yeah.
I noticed there's at least 4 positions that have been vacant since 2022. How is that affecting OCTO operations?
A very good question. I mean, I don't think it impacts us too much. We definitely, we tend to put a little bit of a burden on our senior personnel to help us, carry some weight sometimes. But in general, we work with what we work with. We try to fill those positions though with the talent that we can get through the career hiring process.
Of course, you touched on this in your testimony, but what do you consider to be your main objectives and priorities for the agency in the rest of FY24 and into 25?
Yeah. So we want to make sure that we're rolling out AI in that smart way that we talked about, that we're working to identify our initial cohort of agencies to develop those strategic plans, to put the advisory group and the task force together. We're definitely looking to push forward on our state broadband office to start working on those digital equity plans, to start working on our plans against the broadband equity access and deployment grants as well. Additionally, we're definitely putting a high priority onto our portal projects and our redesign of dc.gov. That's not to say they're our only priorities, but that's top of mind for me right now.
Thank you. Speaking of portals, the business licensing portal is a project you've been working on with DLCP and other, which is another agency under our purview. How often do you roll out new features and license categories for the business portal?
That's a really great question. So, we work with DLCP and 7 or 8 other agencies, Department of Buildings, DDOT, DC Health, FEMS, a lot of them. In general, we put out about 5 releases last year. As of tomorrow, I'd say. So we put out about 5 releases. We have a release planned in April that's going to be increasing the functionality to include those translations. Our release schedule is set and prioritized by our primary partner, DLCP. We work to advise them on the technical components of what they're asking, the integrations with the other systems and whatnot there. Yeah. But yeah, I think in December, if you check to see, we recently released significant enhancements around street vending and just regular, bug fixes, enhancements to some other areas in the portal as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you monitor the usage of the portal by businesses and the frequency of public access for information?
100%. We do monitor everything. We try to keep, we have some base level statistics that we actually look at weekly, which is the number of completed applications, the number that are at 25%, 50%, 75%. We look at, abandonment rates a little bit too. Yeah, we're definitely interested in, seeing the activity that's coming in and even collecting feedback on any gaps that we have. If there's a business area that we're not there yet, we can work to identify that through feedback.
Well, we have gotten some feedback.
Okay.
Not on that, but from agencies indicating that OCTO has insufficient licenses for certain software programs, which means not every agency that wants the program can have it. How do you ensure an adequate supply of licenses for every agency?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. So as I said, we have about 2 years ago, we built out an enterprise contracting team within OCTO. They sit in the executive suite. They work very closely with the OCP's IT acquisitions team, really in tight coordination with that team. So every year, we work to address what is the operational utilization with agencies. Mainly, we're focused on things like email. We want to make sure we're not overspending or open accounts are, that's actually a cybersecurity risk. I talked about that a bit in my testimony. But, we want to make sure that we're working with agencies so that we understand what their utilization needs will be in the current year and in the year to come. We work through a process called an IT assessment. The IT assessment that we're about to work on this coming June is actually going to be for fiscal year 26. What we do is we try to say, here's how many quick base licenses you have. Here's how many seamless stock licenses you have. How many do you think you're going to need in that time frame? And we'll work on that so that we can get a baseline budget put together and put those contracts together to make sure we have the right room. With contracts like QuickBase, we have enough licenses for everyone in the district government. Same thing with a few of our other contracts. With email, that tends to be pretty expensive. That is a multi-million-dollar contract associated with that. So we tend to try to get as close as we can, but we have room for growth built into that contract. Other platforms like Box, it's not appropriate for everyone to use Box. We have other ways to share files. So we try to limit that and get agencies to understand what those appropriate uses are and make sure their utilization is matching that. But if an agency reaches out to us and tells us that they would like licenses for something, we will work with them to provide those licenses.
What happens if you've run out of licenses for something someone asks for?
We'll work with OCP to modify contracts to try to get something put in place and try to understand the need. Again, we work very closely with that IT acquisitions team within OCP, but we also have to follow procurement regulations.
You mentioned the update to the business licensing portal in December for street vending. How is OCTO working with DLCP regarding integrating the new license for street vendors, which of course has a lot of functions to it?
It does have a lot of functions, yeah. So everything's iterative. We work through, so one, I'll say it's every day there is a meeting between our implementation partner, OCTO, and staff from DLCP and other supporting agencies. So everyone that's involved in the project is getting together probably for about 15 minutes just to go through, or they may not be all there. Some of them might be just available by chat, but it's really just getting together and identifying the needs for the day, the priorities for the week, and making sure that we're following through. That same group, then they kind of, we get a report up through to senior leadership, to senior personnel from DLCP and OCTO, and our implementation partner, and we start working out, where those priorities are going to be driven. But primarily the business requirements are worked out with Director Crow and her team. And we make the technology possible in or we define what's going to be possible with the technology, work out the integrations. It's myself and my staff, we're more than happy to get on the phone and call other agencies like OTR or FEMS to find out what we can do to integrate in their systems to make it easier, to make sure that, these street vendors have clean hands if that's, needed, or that they're not trying to do something in front of a fire hydrant. So we're trying to make sure that we're able to meet those needs. I believe there was significant progress made in that December release, though, towards street vending, even to fix some bugs that some public users came to us about.
One of the big issues is that the street vending guidance from DLCP is still being translated into other languages, such as Spanish. They have shared with us that the translation will be finished by April. How will your agency update the portal functionality to include translated materials, and what's the projected timeline for those updates?
That's an excellent question. So we do believe that we're on target for an April release with that. We're minimizing the amount of functional changes so that we can focus on those translations. We're probably going to hit some functional requirements that are needed by Director Crow and her team. But our goal is to hit as many, Spanish being a primary language, but definitely not the only language that we're trying to hit for April. We definitely understand the need to hit, I believe it's our 7 languages in that portal, and we're going to aim as high as we can. We have experience doing this, especially in the platform that we're using. This is a similar platform to, I know it doesn't seem like it, but it's very similar to what we use for like vaccine reservations during the pandemic. So we know that it can handle these translated languages. It's really not a lot of functional changes. It's really a lot of changes on the front end, and then a lot of validation to make sure that contextually the language matches, so that it's understood in Spanish exactly as it's understood in English, exactly as it's understood in French or Vietnamese or Amharic.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does your office document complaints from residents related to technical issues? For instance, we've gotten reports that people are having difficulties creating an account on the 311 website.
So we do get a number of complaints through the Ask the CTO or Ask the Director. That's found on the OCTO website. It's also found on most, I think all DC government websites has one. So anything that comes through to us regarding 311, we would definitely work to inform the Office of Unified Communications about that issue. I'm also, OCTO is also a member of the 311 working group, and any issues that were identified to OCTO as well would have come up in those sessions. Yeah.
Any recurring patterns or trends that may indicate a broader issue that needs fixing?
So, I mean, I definitely, creating accounts is definitely something that we're looking to make easier for residents and businesses. We are looking at single sign-on options for platforms. That's definitely something that we're looking at, and we have piloted in the business portal. Adopting it in platforms like 311 is a possibility, but that's something we'd have to work out with their implementation partner. It is an OUC-led project. We are a technical advisor. Like I said, I'm part of the 311 working group. OCTO has been part of that historically for some time. And yeah, we could work to identify any of those issues that come to us, work that through OUC, work that through that through our own working group, and identify any improvements that we can make with that team.
In your responses, you indicated you're working on creating a system similar to OCTO Helps for human resources. Can you give us more information on this initiative?
Yeah, sure. So it's Human Resources Service Delivery, or HRSD. That's kind of what they call this workspace. We're trying to create, from an internal services perspective, we're trying to create as close to a unified government employee experience as possible. So You know, we found that the platform that we're using for our IT service management platform would work well as an entry point for similar functions across other sister agencies and internal services. The Human Resources Department, this is going to give them capabilities to track, you know, who's calling, what they're calling about. They'll be able to do similar things like knowledge articles about benefits and what benefits are available to employees, what the benefits enrollment process is like. They'll be able to, again, create self-service style components or modules in this that will, you know, help deflect the need to speak with a human being. So, you know, most people should be able to figure out how to, I mean, I always look at like resetting a PeopleSoft password. It's a very popular one for us. I'm sure DCHR also gets calls about that as well, even though it's our responsibility. You know, that's the kind of thing where they can now track that. What excites me about it is, you know, it gives DCHR the capability, instead of saying, you know, we had a handful of people call us about this change during open enrollment, to we've had 824 people call us in the last 24 hours. Like that's a very high number, and I'm making it up, but just to show that they're going to be able to have a greater amount of data, and they'll be able to have a greater amount of transparency, which will help them address any issues that come up down the line. And we're happy to work with Director Hall and his team.
Can you say more about what progress has been made on DC's second ever 4-year tech plan?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of what I talked about was part of that tech plan. So, you know, we talked about doing things like improving customer experience, and we see that the business portal and what we're doing with dc.gov are big pieces of improving that experience, or improving the employee experience is another aspect of that. So working on those projects within the internal services team is another aspect of that. I'd say what we're working on with our state broadband office, again, falls within that same exact thing. So it's a multi-year plan with multiple projects and initiatives that kind of spell out some of the steps that we take to make a more secure, more trusted dc.gov. And here's the steps we're going to do. And it is things like single sign-on, or things like making it easier for agencies to get certificates sometimes. But there's a lot of steps to it. And we are on track to do everything, you know, that we said we were going to do.
What's the updated timeline for it?
So in general, right now, our plan goes out, I believe, to fiscal year 27 or 28. Yeah. But everything on it is really iterative, and like we want to make sure that maybe we identify something down the line that we didn't identify up front. It's a very iterative process at OCTO.
How has OCTO worked to ensure reliable internet in schools?
Hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So I think back in 2022, we started with at the request of DCPS with increasing bandwidth at each individual school. And since then, we have, I think we took everything to 1 gigabit, which was sometimes 10 times more than they had before. And we've monitored that traffic throughout the year, and we've made recommendations on kind of where they were with bandwidth, if they were hitting the ceiling, if they should look to do an increase. And this year, we have increased some of those schools anywhere from 2 to 5 gig, depending on the need. We continue to monitor that. We continue to provide reports to DCPS so that they can make decisions on what they want to increase next. In addition to that, we've also looked at their legacy and aging infrastructure, and we've made recommendations on, you know, their high problem locations where we're receiving multiple requests to visit. And we've made recommendations on which locations to kind of update to stabilize the environment.
Thank you. And how does the office work with the Office of Contract and Procurement to manage the procurement automated support system?
Yeah, sure. You know, it's a historic relationship going back a very long time. Actually, OCTO worked to implement the original version of PASS, which we're still operating today. So we operate, we maintain. That means that OCP comes to us with requirements. We work to get those requirements into the existing system. We take technical support calls. We're integrated into what they call the Procurement Center of Excellence. So it may be, you know, if someone's having an issue with getting a requisition in or getting a purchase order to go into ordered status, that may end up being a technical issue, and OCP will work with us to have us address that. We continue to be their lead technology and implementation and integration partner as well. So we build things like the contracts transparency portal for them, or when the district integrated financial system launched, OCTO built, and we continue to maintain the integration with that system.
Thank you.
Yep.
Now, OCTO is supposed to be working with OCP to modernize the district's procurement platform through the Enterprise Procurement Solutions Initiative. Could you give us some background on this initiative?
Yeah, sure. So this is an initiative that is looking to move our procurement system from the current on-premise, about 18-year-old system into the cloud, into something that it's more secure, more configurable, a little more reliable. We're a key technology partner on this, but we are not the lead agency. We do rely upon OCP for their deep knowledge of the procurement process that I work to understand that every day. But we also were the key partner on their integrations, again, into other systems. So we'll help them with, again, transparency, integration into supplier services or financial services with the CFO's office, or anyone else that needs to integrate into that system. We'll continue to be that. It's kind of a barrier in a way, but we're just there to make sure that if you're integrating into that system, you're doing it right, you're doing it the right way, and you're working with us, and we're aware of it.
How much of the initiative has been completed?
So there's a significant amount of work that is complete, just from a kind of a baseline level. I believe their core functionality is well situated at this point. But where we're at today is we're looking to begin would be probably the most important phase, which is integrations testing. So integrations can make or break a system. Really what that means is, we can go in very confident that we have the best system in the world, and then we go into integrations and we find out that there's a series of issues on different ends. They may not necessarily be in the past system. They may not necessarily be in the other system, but there's always something that needs to come up. There's always testing that needs to occur from an integration standpoint, because it's as close to real world performance as you're going to get. So that's where we're at now.
Where are we today compared to where we were supposed to be?
Okay. So, it's a very interesting question. Where we're supposed to be was definitely impacted by something like the pandemic, for sure. The pandemic had up and downstream effects on that project. We did have to kind of hold off because we needed to make sure all of our resources were going towards creating the emergency procurement process, that we were making sure that we could move quickly and efficiently to, whether it was, buying PPE, or in, my case, quickly procuring a system so that we can get vaccine reservations made. So we basically, during the pandemic, we had to put that on hold. There was also impacts on the CFO side with the district, with the diffs system as well. So they were also trying to make sure that SOAR was going to be able to make it through the pandemic period as well. So any delays that happened during the pandemic basically affected both projects and put us into a position where we kind of had to hold for a bit. It's possible that we would have been done today. It's also possible we could have faced an issue that we didn't see. But at this point, we're highly confident in the functionality, and we're just looking to move forward that integration testing. That's what we're focused on now.
How long does integration testing take?
It depends on the amount of issues that come up, but usually I say conversationally, it could be 3 months, could be 6 months, could be 9 months. There's a lot that can happen in integration testing, especially when you're talking about billions of dollars in transactions and thousands of suppliers internationally.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You've talked a bit about dc.gov. Exciting to hear there'll be a working beta site at the end of this fiscal year. What feedback have you received from district residents regarding the redesign?
Yeah, sure. There was a lot of feedback, but in general, people are looking to eliminate what we'll call the alphabet soup. They don't want to know that trash pickup is handled by DPW. They just want to know trash pickup is handled on dc.gov. There's a lot that's, pretty easy to figure out. Obviously, DMV is DMV, but at the same time, there's a lot of hidden services out there, and that's one of the main things we want to make sure is just visible and upfront on dc.gov. It's a DC service, not a DPW service, not a DDOT service, not a DLCP service. Our portal projects are a big piece of this too, but in general, that is one of our number one pieces of feedback. The other would be, you know, making it more accessible is always a concern, and modernizing to you know, a newer framework is going to help us with accessibility, and then making it easier to navigate, which kind of hits in that alphabet soup, but that's a lot of what we've heard. Yeah.
Your agency was tasked with implementing a district-wide cloud data exchange platform. How's that going?
It's actually going very well. It's an exciting project. It is actually a kind of a core piece as well to things like the modernization of the procurement system, the portal projects in general, what we work on with our looking to orchestrate and automate things in our IT service management platform. So that cloud data exchange is going to be it's super important to us, and we're hoping that we can have some kind of initial work available to, you know, key partners in the coming year, but ideally the system is probably going live in fiscal year 25.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
In your key performance indicators, the percentage of desktop issue tickets resolved within 4 hours went from 72% to 54%. Similarly, the percent of IT help desk tickets resolved within 1 business day lowered from 89% to 50%. How do you account for these steep declines?
So new system jitters to a bit feed into this a little bit. So it's, you know, I'd say number one, we definitely improve the customer experience. So through all of this, those customer satisfaction rates remain very high in the 90s, like 88, I think to some degrees, 95 and others. Like it is at a much higher level of customer satisfaction coming out of it. I think a lot of this comes down to, again, new system jitters. There's, you know, the back end of it. We have to make sure that we're putting things into the right state so that it's tracked at the right state. It's definitely a concern if we're saying something is completed when it isn't completed, but it's also a concern when we're saying something is open and it's actually closed, or that kind of situation. We have that tech enablement team that's helping to educate our workforce and the workforce at other agencies so that they're aware of the right way to handle tickets. You know, we're hoping that we can, you know, in the coming year that we do a lot better based on all that training and engagement that we're working on. But again, customer satisfaction is much higher than it used to be.
Thank you. What's the timeline for completing the state digital equity plan?
Glad you asked that question.
Oh, okay.
We've done a draft of all parts. We've submitted that draft. We've taken into account, we had a public comment period, so we've taken into account the feedback from public comment, both from residents and our Tech Together partners. We've incorporated those changes in our revision, and we're now under review with NTIA.
Under review with?
With NTIA.
NTIA.
Mm-hmm. National Telecommunications. Yeah, I always struggle with commerce.
Well, if you struggle, then I'm not going to get it. All right. So but that's the federal overseer.
Yes, the federal
Okay.
oversight, sorry.
Okay. So it's with them.
Yes. All parts.
Great. What's the public engagement been like on that?
It's been very, very good. It's been very positive. I think there was a period where there were some things that we neglected to include. Some of the involvement with some of the partners, and we've since gone back and we've corrected that, made sure that they were included. And that was the big thing. We put an idea out. We wanted to get feedback. We wanted to make sure that we incorporated all of those ideas, so that everyone knows that they're a part of the plan.
Great.
And if I may, it's the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, NTIA.
At our last performance oversight hearing, you told us, well, we were told, about the district's recently created State Broadband and Digital Equity Office. You mentioned that your agency could go after more funding for digital equity work in about a year, and that nonprofits could go after competitive grants as well. Is that in motion?
Upon approval, we're still waiting for approval of the plan.
Okay,
So
and
once that's approved, then we can take
that's
the next
the,
steps.
that's,
Right.
okay, and that is the same, that's the state digital equity
Correct.
plan that's under review. Okay. Okay, and then how will you make nonprofits aware of the potential funding?
Well, we've been doing that today through our Tech Together website. We've also put things out in the DC Register. So we will continue to make that information public. We also hold Tech Together conferences.
Mhm.
We're doing it on a quarterly basis. I think it's something we're gonna, as we get closer to or get to the actual approval, we'll begin to narrow that time and maybe do it on a monthly basis. But in addition to all the outreach that we've been doing and we continue to do.
So I think you touched on this in testimony, but HCMA received a grant under the state and local cybersecurity grant program to develop and implement a state cybersecurity plan. Can you give us an update on where you are in that process?
Yeah, sure. So, we established a cyber planning committee that's led by OCTO. That was one of the first steps. It's got representatives as well from multiple clusters, other agencies and multiple clusters. The committee's in the process of finalizing that strategic cybersecurity plan. We also had an initial draft that's been submitted for comments to CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure and Security Agency. It's one of the first documents I signed as interim CTO. They're the administrator of that grant. So we're gonna wait and on that from them.
And how does your office ensure the maximization of federal grant funds so we aren't returning unspent money?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, we're going to be monitoring it for compliance. That's one of the things that's going to help us. We're going to ensure that the work and the spend are in compliance and on track. We're going to monitor what we planned by DC Gov and any external entities who are also going to receive those grant dollars.
And is that specific to the HCMA fund?
Yes.
Okay. What about in general with federal grant funds? How do you ensure we spend every dollar?
So we keep an eye on it. It's very important to us that we are, especially with those federal funds. We know how precious they are. It really is making sure that we're following the rules, making sure that we're compliant, making sure that our plans are acceptable and that they're being executed upon, and just, continuously working with those teams that are executing against those funds.
How has your agency handled the new obligations and functions required of the agency in FY23 under the Internet Equity Amendment Act?
We may have to get back to you on that one.
Okay.
Yes, we'll get back to you on that one.
At the last performance oversight hearing, we talked about funding in the budget to further implement the risk management framework. We heard about the agency creating a risk registry that would help us assess where the investments need to go. Could you give us an update on that initiative?
Yes. So yeah, okay. So we are on track with developing that risk register. We've gone through the discovery process to try to find the right tools that are going to help us with this. We've identified what's going to help us to document and remediate the vulnerable end-of-life systems and applications. And we're starting to work with agencies to make sure that they understand their role in this as well.
Great. The Office of the Inspector General recommended that OCTO manage, develop, and implement a tracking solution related to system vulnerabilities that's supposed to be complete by FY24. Is that what you're talking about in terms of documenting the systems?
It's similar.
Okay.
So yes, we would probably use similar tools against those two things.
Okay. And what's the timeline?
So, I believe we're in the process of evaluating what's available. We want to make sure that we're getting a tool that's going to work with our future vision for everything, like from asset management, configuration management. So, we're kind of looking at those tools, looking at the dollar value that we need to assign to that procurement, going through that activity of, putting together a statement of work. It's something that we're looking to nail down, I believe, in this fiscal year. This fiscal year, yes.
Okay, and I may be confusing things here, but
No.
with the OIG recommendation, the tracking solution is supposed to be complete by FY24. Is that on
Yeah.
track?
Yes.
Okay, okay. One of the requirements of the recommendation is that all DC agencies must report any known cybersecurity vulnerabilities to OCTO Security Operations Center within 24 hours of becoming aware of the vulnerability. Have agencies begun reporting this data?
Yes. Agencies are doing a great job getting a hold of us. Sometimes it might be 25 hours, but we're definitely engaging with agencies. I think they recognize that we're the subject matter expert in this, and they notify either OCTO executive leadership or our security operations center.
Is the agency tracking this data?
Yes, we do track this data. We'll create incidents in our service management system.
In FY24, the OIG completed an evaluation of the district's use of cybersecurity waivers. I understand the content of that report is not available to the public. However, OIG made 10 recommendations to OCTO as a result. How will your agency work with OIG to ensure their concerns are addressed?
So one, this also kind of falls under similarly to things like the risk management framework. So, we, again, will make sure that we're documenting everything, that we're assigning timelines, that we're assigning follow-up capabilities. And again, we're looking to, tie this into systems so that we can relate it all together down the line. So we know, the impact of, a documented waiver, what the upstream and downstream impact of something like that is.
Thank you very much. We've been joined by at-large Councilmember Christina Henderson. We're going to do 10-minute rounds. Recognize you for a statement when it's your round. Okay. Okay, we're good. All right. How did you develop your AI values?
That's a great question. So it was a lot of research, a lot of reading, a lot of meeting with different companies to understand what their stance, what their capabilities were going to be. But yeah, we basically looked at global laws. We looked at other executive orders that were already done. There was I think in the time we worked on ours, there was probably about maybe 8 executive orders that made their way out. There was maybe 7 or 8 legislative mandates that kind of came out, and then a couple of policies that were done across the states, cities, and counties. So we took a look at what they were doing. We identified what we thought were gaps in their plans. We looked at the executive order that came out from President Biden, looked to see if there was anything that we needed to address as a more local entity. We highlighted the need out of that we needed to be accountable with our use of AI, that we needed to find ways to make it equitable and transparent. So those were immediately the quickest ways that we could find our values. And then what we started to find is that this also kind of aligned with a lot of what we think about every day when it comes to DC values, when it comes to how we operate at OCTO, right? That OCTO way. So we wanted to make sure that we were identifying AI use only when there was a clear benefit to using AI. We're not trying to make a splash when we deploy AI. We're trying to make a significant improvement to government services. And we felt that the 6 values that we put in place will do exactly that. And the mayor found that again, that it aligned very well with the values that she sees within DC. And then last but certainly not least is always going to be privacy and cybersecurity for us. It's definitely not least. Let me put it that way. We don't want any solution being put in place where I'm going to have a call with Director Ross at the Office of Risk Management about an event. So making sure that AI was compliant with those existing policies at OCTO was another key thing. And as I said in my testimony, our goal is to make sure every implementation of AI that comes across to the advisory group is going to adhere to all 6 of those values.
Thank you.
That's it. You're welcome.
Does the current or new telework policy have a negative impact on OCTO's ability to attract or retain IT talent?
It's a very good question. We haven't really seen an impact. We believe that we're leading by example. the staff at OCTO, they help to operationalize policies like this every day, right? So, they've been working to be compliant with the new policy. We expect that we're going to be compliant by the deadline. I believe it's March 11th. March 10th, I think, is Sunday, if I'm remembering correctly. We feel that it's not really going to be an issue for us. It creates a secure environment for our workforce. And again, OCTO has not necessarily seen an impact at this date. We're thinking of, creative and innovative ways to make sure that the remote workers remain engaged in that one day. But, we haven't really, again, seen a direct impact yet.
How is OCTO impacted by the recent consolidation of tech companies, both locally and globally? And has this had a negative impact on our ability to work with CBEs on IT projects?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, in general, it's the immediate impact. So immediate one that comes to mind, there was a recent acquisition of, VMware. So, we immediately have to get to know, another company that we really haven't worked with at the same scale. So that's kind of that's an impact for us almost immediately, is just kind of getting to know new account teams, waiting to see what the ripple effects will be with their staff. In general, it really doesn't impact our ability to work with, CBs that much. We engage usually around like 120, 121 CBs in a given year. They help us operate our systems. They help us with implementation projects across the board. We wouldn't be able to make improvements like we did with careers.dc.gov without our CBEs being involved from a staff augmentation standpoint. We need expertise when we need it. We lean on our CBEs. We actually kind of see an upside for this too. I mean, there's going to be, as these acquisitions happen, CBEs are going to be able to leverage their existing relationships to learn about new technologies and give them opportunities well beyond what they can do with just the district government, just with DC government.
Does OCTO get involved with other agencies while they're planning modernization projects or looking to create new websites or applications?
Yeah. So there's a couple of different touch points on that. So in general, there's a budgetary process that we're involved in called the IT Investment Review Board. So any new operational or capital project that's coming through, we're going to vet it, not just with OCTO, but with a select group of agency CIOs across every cluster. So we want to make sure that, we're bringing our knowledge of enterprise services and enterprise IT to the table, and that we're also bringing, some domain level experts in there, CIO from Health and Human Services to look at our Health and Human Services projects. So that's kind of an initial touch point. Sometimes that's years in advance because of the budget process that you're aware of. We also have our statutory role in IT procurement. Again, we work very closely with OCP's IT acquisitions team. They are embedded in our office. There's also a statutory role for OCTO to review any procurement over $25,000. So if an agency wasn't working with us before that, they're working with us after that. There's also, we have weekly engagement with our CIOs and agency IT leads. That's been going on for, before the pandemic that I can recall. I remember standing up in front of those CIOs years ago to talk about initiatives that we had with some of our platforms. But yeah, that's, we try to create an engaging and collaborative space with our CIOs so that they can talk to us, they can talk to each other. And then, we have one-on-one conversations. I know I did as a deputy CTO and now as interim CTO. I know Henry does. I know Mike and Sunil and Tayseen, like we're all touching base with our CIOs and agency IT leads to find out what it is they're doing. They love what we're doing with the portals. They're looking forward to what we're doing with dc.gov.
Excellent.
Yep.
What role did your office play in assisting the Board of Elections with the breach of their website data?
Yeah, sure. So they reached out to us and they also reached out, through, city leadership, through the Office of the City Administrator. We were aware of the breach, I think, with around that 24-hour mark. We started working with them immediately to engage our federal partners, whether it was the FBI or CISA, as I mentioned earlier. And then we held daily meetings with them while we worked to determine what it was exactly that happened. Once we determined what it was that happened, we worked out and planned next steps with them. I think we got to a point where we were meeting with them on a weekly basis. And now we continue to engage with them on next steps for replacing some of their existing systems or putting in place measures that will protect them. Yeah.
In recent memory, it seems like the data breaches tend to be happening with independent agencies. How does your office lend support to independent agencies with respect to their cybersecurity?
So, I feel our Security Operations Center is second to none, and we have a great Chief Information Security Officer in Sunil. Any agency that reaches out to us, we're going to work with them. We got the subject matter expertise. We think that they recognize that. They think that they know we're available when they ask us to be available. And, if we can't help them, we know the partners that can, whether it's calling in someone to perform an independent investigation or, again, working with those individuals, working with individuals that we have relationships with at the FBI or CISA or MPD that deal with cybercrimes.
Last year in the BSA, there was a measure that would have granted OCTO cybersecurity authority over independent agencies, but it was removed. Is there a permanent bill coming down?
I would say it's definitely something that we're interested in. But, in general, most agencies voluntarily work with us today. We also extend that out to DC Council, the Office of the Attorney General, the Auditor, et cetera.
How is the agency maintaining the migration of federal Affordable Connectivity Program recipients to the Internet for All program?
So initially, we've, through the outreach arm, through the State Broadband Office, we've encouraged folks to sign up. And we saw the recent news that they're going to discontinue the program, so there's no additional signups. But we've also included language in the proposals that we've submitted to NTIA for connectivity, as well as there's some digital literacy and some other components in there as well.
Thank you. And how does your agency assess communities to find where Wi-Fi hotspots are most needed?
So the initial approach was to look at every government occupied facility to place devices on top of those locations. And as agencies begin to move to, again, place outdoor units on top of those locations where possible. In some cases, it's indoor, it's in a lobby space. What we've learned is that there's limitation with Wi-Fi when you talk about the outdoor space. So we do have access points outdoor that are in close proximity to residents. But the thought is that we would now leverage the CIP partners, the community internet program partners, because they're able to get that signal or bandwidth closer to the actual residents.
Great. I'll turn to Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Chair Nadeau. Good afternoon. It's good to be with you guys. I'm not on this committee, but I have lots of interest in terms of the work of OCTO. I want to start actually on talking about internet access. Where would you say we are right now in terms of the number or the percentage of households in the district who are not connected in some way?
I don't have those exact numbers. I can say there is a significant percentage of folks that can afford. I think the statement or the study showed that it's more than 2% of their income in some cases. So trying to drive down costs was a key factor to make it more affordable.
Right.
In other places, when you look at unserved, it's a very small population, but it's something that we look to address within the digital equity and BEAD funding.
Right. So when we talk about the idea that the Internet for All federally funded program is winding down, what's our stopgap here to continue the type of programming that we've been doing in the district around digital equity?
So again, stopgap is one, we have the existing outdoor Wi-Fi that we've been leveraging for years. We'll continue to grow that, but at a smaller rate because, so we're very targeted in where we deploy that. Before it was just put it everywhere.
Yep.
Now we're being very strategic in where do we get the most bang for the buck in deployment? Because there's some places where we would have deployed it in the past and there's nobody around, right? There's a park space or there's a large empty lot where no one takes advantage of it.
Well, one of the things, I understand having the public internet access in the public space, but one of the things I'd say a couple of OCTO directors ago that we were talking about was around public housing Now, obviously, we don't own those buildings or positions, et cetera, right? They are a quasi-independent agency. But to your point around not putting hotspots in places where people aren't. And then we also have the situation of we have a growing number of individuals who they can't afford it because it's such a significant part of their income. This seems like a logical option for us if we're going to continue with our values of expanding.
You are correct in that.
Okay.
And we have done several pilot projects.
Correct.
Included some of those housing developments.
Yes.
And we look to expand. And
I wanted to ask how have those gone?
They've gone fairly well. I won't say I've tracked the stats lately because we now have an office that tracks that. I've tracked it during the early deployments, and I was surprised at the amount of utilization that was there. That spoke to the need, right?
Right. But you guys don't put out, well, I don't really like to require reports because I never get them on time, I've learned. But I feel like when you do a pilot demonstration project, it's incumbent upon the agency to actually say whether or not the demonstration worked or not, and whether or not we feel like this is a good investment. I think that pilot started to be deployed perhaps, my first or second year on the council, and I haven't really heard anything about it since. And I think it actually is a great opportunity in terms of expansion. So to the extent that you all have an internal report on what happened in year one, what happened in year two, that you could provide to the committee, I think that would be great to just see.
Okay. I think we can definitely get back and provide those.
You guys are still for the housing areas that you deployed it's still going on?
Yeah. So there was a need for, so during the pandemic, there was a need for DHS had a need.
Yep.
As well as DC housing, right? So we can definitely provide the data from those, and it's still going on. I don't know if the levels are the same because kids are back in school, and folks have been returning to work. So you may not see the same amount of utilization, but we can definitely provide the data in chunks and show during the pandemic, this is what it was.
That'd be great.
And after this.
That'd be great. Because, if we're going to think about expanding it or not, and I don't even know if you guys have had some recent conversations with DCHA as they're thinking about the modernization of their properties.
Yeah.
Okay. And in terms of what they plan to do or what they want to do sort of going forward, I think this would be just sort of great information.
We are partnering with them in their plans and helping them think through so that we can all work smarter and not harder going forward.
I'm into that, right? Like, let's not reinvent the wheel on some of these things. Okay, let's talk about government websites. Our websites don't look like something for the 2024 year. Can never find anything that you're looking for. Some of that, like, you got to click through to get to the file, and then the file is the only thing on the page, and then you got to click that, and then it opens up to something else. We've been talking about this redesign project for forever, and it feels like some of the agencies have just decided, you know what, we're not going to wait on OCTO anymore. We're just going to do our own thing. Like, I could name a couple of different websites where it doesn't look like any of the other DC government websites because they have just decided to redesign them themselves because they couldn't wait. So what's the actual timeline here in deploying some better functionality?
So one, I could say we probably designed those websites that you saw, depending on the agency. So I agree. We do excellent work. A lot of the websites we put out now, the more recent ones, it is a more modern design. We're not putting out as much white space, and it's a bigger font and everything looks great. But I have great news for you. So in 45 days, we're going to get deliverables from a CBE that's been working on the redesign effort.
Okay.
So we're going to have wireframes. We're going to have a brand manual. We're going to be basically ready to take the next steps, which is putting together the requirements for a implementation team.
Okay.
And design of a Drupal 10 system. Right now we're in Drupal 8. So we're looking to move into that more modern system with this new design based upon a long time CBE. That's again, meeting a deliverable in 45 days.
Okay.
Our goal is to have a beta version of dc.gov available by the end of this fiscal year. And
all right.
The the end result websites, like you should see, based on that beta version and the feedback that we get, we're going to engage with residents and businesses. We're going to engage with agencies on what they want to see, because it is about making it, a much better, much more accessible website. It's also about meeting some of the needs that agencies have come to us as well, right? We want to make sure agencies are going with our services. They're not going out and buying something that's insecure that could be hosted in someone's basement in New Jersey. But
Right.
in general, we're making a lot of progress, and I'd be, I'll
Okay.
share my testimony with you that gives a little bit of an update on that.
Okay, 45 days. So around budget time ish,
Yeah.
give or take, I could come back and ask you for an update.
Yes, we'll be able to show you wireframes.
Okay.
We'll be able to show you some of the early branding guides and all that stuff.
Okay,
Yes.
wonderful. Do we have standards around user testing when we're deploying new applications or websites such as this?
Yeah, we sure do. So there's a couple.
Is it just
sides
that
to
people don't use it?
Well, so people definitely use it. So what I'd say is there's a couple components to it. So there's initially what we would call inside the house, that's software quality assurance. So that's making sure that we're not putting something out there that's going to embarrass us right away with bugs and defects. And then the next step in this is going out and doing user testing. We use a tool, usertesting.com is what we use now. So we're tracking how people get around a page. It does heat maps and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
We do engage with a lot of those newer sites that you see. We actually engaged with people through usertesting.com to make those sites possible.
Okay. There's one site that I know they didn't. District Direct. There's no way. District Direct is the public benefit portal. If you're going to do Medicaid, TANF, WIC, Alliance, it all comes through there. And I know they're doing it for their next rollout this summer. They're going to do the user testing. But the reason I asked about the standards is because I feel like this should just be part of OCTO's checklist for agencies. If you're going to if you're rolling out a public facing something, you have to do user testing.
I agree.
Okay.
And yeah, we'll work with them. It's definitely something where those branding guides and those style guides and those accessibility guides, they'll be shared with agencies as well so that they can apply it to their own development projects.
Okay. I was going to ask you about devices and purchasing devices, but I don't think I really have enough time. So I'll stop there. But thank you.
I mean, do you want to is that your last question?
It is my last question.
Why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. So in like 3 previous lives, I used to work at DC Public Schools and do contract and procurement, part of my role. And one of the things I couldn't understand is that if someone in DC government wanted to buy a vehicle as part of a fleet, you had to purchase it from the car manufacturer because we needed the warranty and all of the different things, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to us purchasing devices, we can't just go to Apple or Dell or HP and cut a deal. We have to go through a CBE, which might have a write-up on said product. And then you don't even get the Apple Care on the back end. So I'm curious if you all have thought a little bit about this. I'm not anti-CBE. I am pro-efficiency in terms of the district getting the best bang for its buck, in terms of why we have one requirement when it comes to a vehicle and another requirement when it comes to devices that cycle through use but require maintenance and those kinds of things.
Yeah, so we've thought about this a lot. In general, we benefit when devices are standardized. We definitely benefit when we also engage with our CBEs. We do look to find ways that CBEs can add value to those kind of contracts. It's potentially, they could be, CBE can get a certification to be, an Apple repair technician, or to be to offer certified repairs on Dell or an HP. We're always open to that. We're definitely, though, we do look to standardize as much equipment as possible. What we have to, just within my own agency, I would say, the right equipment for some of my teams that are doing development work, they may be overkill for teams that are doing tier 1 help desk, just, answering phone calls.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure that we're putting together the right kind of systems, that we're engaging with the right, with the right primary and secondary vendors, so CBEs or Apple or Dell or HP. We also want to make sure that we're getting quality equipment. It definitely, if we went out and we bought, what's going to be, what we think is best, and, the battery lasts 2 hours for most users, they're not going to be happy. So there's a lot of thought that goes into it, but it is definitely something that we want to move towards. It helps us, it also helps us to make sure that, if we find that, we bought 10,000 laptops from this supplier and they all had faulty batteries, we're never going to do that again. So it just kind of like, there's a lot there. It is something that's top of mind for us. We've also, we've looked at things like leasing equipment that's going to help us in that space too.
Okay.
There's a lot of consideration that we're going through, but it's top of mind. And
Okay.
it's something our enterprise contracts team is interested.
Great. I'm glad to hear that you guys are thinking about it, because that was one of the things that it's always sort of just like, there seems to be an easier way to do it. We just got to sort of work through it. But thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. I'm just wrapping up here. How many internet service providers have taken advantage of the community internet program?
So to date, I believe we have WeLink, who was a partner from the beginning. We have published it. It's on our Tech Together page. We've talked about it with our Tech Together partners. Various folks have expressed an interest, but have not yet come back to sign up as part of the program.
So it's a work in progress.
Mhm.
How many households are signed up?
I'll say from the initial start, we've probably WeLink has probably I won't say they've signed up 10,000 homes. I'll say they've made available, their service area encompasses roughly 10,000 households, and they're responsible for doing the actual engagement with the customer. And again, up until this point, they would encourage folks to sign up or walk them through the ACP program. That was part of their requirement as well. So if they were eligible, they would know, like, that organization would help them work through that progress.
Have we gotten feedback from customers on whether they
We
like the
actually-
program, like the
it's
service?
interesting. We went out to the Trinidad neighborhood, and we've talked with the grandmother to understand her needs. We talked with the data scientist 2 blocks away, and then we've talked with several others. But the point is, we've talked through a range of individuals and how they use it to see if they all benefited from the access or had any concerns or issues.
In December, DC Police announced a real-time crime center to monitor surveillance footage. What role will OCTO play in the establishment of this center?
So, generally, they're running off of bits and pieces of our infrastructure, but it's an MPD led project.
Okay. Oh, it's fixed. So we're having technical difficulties.
I'm sorry to hear that. How can I be of help?
You please come fix my stylus. Okay. Sorry. So I appreciate that. And then we heard from public witnesses about positive developments in the DC Archives initiative. They indicated the next steps would be regular transfers of digital records from OCTO into the archives. When is that set to begin?
So I'll work with Dr. Matthews on getting something together, and we can get back to you with that timeline. Yeah, we can work on that.
Great. Thank you. That is all I have for you today. Thank you so much, both of you,
Thank you, Chairperson.
for your testimony. So we'll now call the Director of the Office of Risk Management, Jed Ross. If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give to the Committee on Public Works and Operations is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Great. You may begin your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Nadeau, members and staff of the Committee on Public Works and Operations. I'm Jed Ross, Chief Risk Officer and Director of the District of Columbia's Office of Risk Management. It is a privilege to testify today as the Director of ORM and as a longtime district resident and advocate of the Mayor's initiatives and vision to advance DC values and priorities. I'm particularly proud of what the district has accomplished in the 50 years since achieving limited home rule. To quote Mayor Bowser from her statement commemorating the 50th anniversary of home rule, "We built a strong local economy, and today we are a donor state and give more to the federal government than we get back. In just the past 20 years, DC went from junk bond status to having a AAA bond rating. We transformed our public education system, and today we have the most students enrolled in our public schools since we began our system-wide count. We lead with strong DC values, and time again, we have led the way on important civil and human rights issues. We have strong, vibrant neighborhoods across all 8 wards. I would like to think that since its creation in 2003, ORM played a small part in these achievements. In this regard, I'm pleased to have this opportunity to highlight ORM's efforts in fiscal year 2023 and share the progress made to date in fiscal year 2024. ORM's mission is to reduce the probability, occurrence, and cost of risk to the district government and the residents it serves. To fulfill this mission, ORM works to institutionalize and systematize the practice of risk management within district government agencies and to reduce the likelihood and severity of potential losses through the implementation of effective risk prevention and control strategies. We achieve these by providing objective management leadership guidance and support to district agencies through ORM's 4 main divisions: the Public Sector Workers' Compensation Program, PSWCP, the Risk Prevention and Safety Division, RPS, the Tort Liability Division, and the Captive Insurance Agency. Together, ORM's divisions work to foster a culture of risk awareness and promote risk management across our government. As for the agency as a whole, I'm proud of our FY23 customer service and staffing achievements. During the past fiscal year, ORM handled 5,135 customer service calls and scored a nearly perfect score, 99 out of 100%, in assisting all of those calls in 3 rings or less. Of the 37 customer service surveys received, ORM scored excellent or good on 30 of the 37. Regarding staffing, with the diligent and effective assistance of the agency's new human resources manager, we were able to fill 19 out of 22 vacancies with an average fill time of 36 days. We also completed our annual ethics training. During fiscal year 23, one of the areas that the PSWCP focused on was customer service. The first step was listening to the needs of the injured workers through in-person and virtual information sessions, followed up by outreach calls every 6 months to check whether their needs were being met. Through these listening sessions and follow-ups, we identified areas of improvement. As a result, we added many new well-respected orthopedic doctors to our provider panel. We made changes to some PSWCP required forms to make them more user-friendly and easier to understand. And to better support injured employees, we completed 10 agency training courses on workers' compensation, reviewing with each agency the process for addressing injuries and the necessity for urgency and thorough documentation. Fiscal year 23 was also a busy year for ORM's RPS division. RPS conducted 217 proactive inspections, translating into a 53% increase from fiscal year 22. To better record and track the inspections, ORM's IT division enhanced the inspections module in eRisk that allows for more efficient communication and for the monitoring of corrective actions needed to abate hazards identified during inspections. Both RPS and the insurance division spent a significant amount of time in eRisk updating and verifying the district government's building data used to identify locations of incidents for inspection purposes and to compile the schedule of buildings for real property insurance. In fiscal year 23, the tort division continued to improve the identification of high exposure or risk areas. For example, the tort division proactively engaged agency general counsels to give awareness on high exposure issues.
To streamline this process, the Tort Division implemented a liability and subrogation reporting system that automatically generated tailored reports from eRisk to the appropriate agency representative. The reports are customized to meet the specific need of each agency, capturing details such as the location of infrastructure damaged caused by negligent third parties. Improvements in reporting involving damage by third-party tortfeasors led to more successful subrogation efforts. I am pleased to say that ORM has already collected over $8 million during the past 7.5 years since the agency has made these recoveries a priority during my tenure, and I'm looking forward to continuing increasing in collections. The district's captive insurance agency has been diligently working to better assess the district government's risks and how to transfer such risk to third parties when possible. In fiscal year 23, the captive continued to be an excellent vehicle for local community health clinics to obtain subsidized medical malpractice insurance when needed to procure insurance for district agencies. The captive also continues to work with DC government agencies to standardize insurance requirements where feasible. These requirements often need revision due to changes in the insurance marketplace and related exposures. However, where implemented appropriately, they provide consistency and transparency for both district agencies and their third-party partners. During fiscal year 24, ORM is looking forward to continually collecting better data and approving processes across all divisions. As a result, we hope to better accomplish our mission and best serve ORM stakeholders and the residents of the District of Columbia. Our focus will continue to be providing excellent customer service, tracking contingent liabilities arising from litigation, increasing collections against third-party tortfeasors, and establishing standard insurance claims management. Chairperson Nadeau, I have said it in the past and would like to say it again. I'm very, very fortunate to have so many dedicated and hardworking civil servants at the agency. It is through their daily dedication and capable efforts that we continue to perform so well. As you are aware, while our agency is less public than most, we do a significant amount of work in support of all district agencies, including the council, to better support government operations. The agency is fortunate to have the support of the administration, and we hope this committee to continue the great work we are doing. ORM will ensure that the channels of communication with you and your staff remain open and productive. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and if it is okay with you, I hope to stop by and see your first term scrapbook.
Absolutely. Scrapbook is there for everyone. Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. I'll start this afternoon with a few questions about your agency operations and core risk management functions. I'm glad to see that ORM has successfully implemented the e-risk management system that so many models are actively being used. Are there any additional modules that will be added, and what's the project timelines for these functionalities?
Thank you, Councilmember. We have in the last year implemented with MPD's Police and Firefighter Clinic, which has been a fantastic tool where they can now manage their claims in the same system. They have their own structure, but nonetheless, we helped in supporting them. We also worked with the Department of Behavioral Health to have a very specialized and specific incident management function within the system. And we continue to provide services to other agencies as it relates to their general counsels in order to have a way for them to manage their litigation and other matters.
Great. Can you share the current status of the implementation of the Office of the DC Auditor recommendations related to joint standard operating procedures between ORM, OCFO, OAG for the Statements and Judgments Fund?
Yes, we have continued to work with the Office of the Attorney General and the OCFO. We not too long ago got a bunch of fields and data sets from the Office of Attorney General in order to help build out that configuration to coordinate amongst the systems. So we continue to work with them and look forward to their partnership in sending the data over into our system. We also provide our data to them from our system directly. So when a claim is filed, it moves over. When a lawsuit is filed, they can make a request, and then we can ensure that they get access to the information so they can best defend the district.
In your pre-hearing responses, you noted the district government building workplace safety and health inspection team increased proactive inspections by 53%. That's great to hear that this is improving, but can you provide more context about the total number of district government buildings and what percentage of these buildings are inspected proactively?
Sure. We, in FY22, we were working to get fully staffed in that area, and we in FY23 did get 2 additional folks to be fully staffed, and we now have a 3rd. So that team is able to do the inspections fully. It's our goal to do around 300 proactive inspections, but we also are responding to complaints and concerns on a regular basis, which that same team will go out proactively to respond whenever there is a building-wide concern.
And what is the total number of government buildings?
We have around 600 or 700 buildings on our schedule that we work to ensure. The team, as I said in my testimony, did an amazing job of working really hard to go through that list to make sure that we're appropriately ensuring the right buildings at the right values. We also then communicate with DGS about that buildings list. So we're working proactively with them to ensure that we're all in sync.
That's great. And how did you get the inspection number up? You're talking about, was it strictly the staffing?
We have more staff and awesome, fantastic staff. They're doing an excellent job.
You noted that the Risk Prevention and Safety Division responded to more than 100 reports of unsafe or unhealthy conditions at government work sites in 23 and 24. So far, how do these numbers of complaints compare to previous years?
I think generally they're the same. I think during the years of the pandemic, it obviously was a lot less.
Yeah.
But generally it's the same. Some years it's been very low and some years it's higher. It really depends. Oftentimes in our work, claims and problems, you can't always foresee them. You just have to build up structure in order to be responsive. I think we're pretty normal in our annual amounts. The same might happen for potholes, right? The weather depends on how many potholes we'll have and how many claims we might have. And the same can happen with buildings. If the weather's really bad, it's deteriorating our buildings more, we might get more claims or might get more complaints about health and safety inspections.
What was the outcome of the inspections in FY23 and 24 so far?
Yeah, our inspections, we go out, we provide support. Sometimes it comes from the union, sometimes it comes from individual employees. We are proactively going out and then working with DGS or working with the building managers at those locations and agency risk managers to address them. So generally, they're always being addressed. They're always being resolved. Some of them are large capital expenditures that have to be put onto a program in terms of making sure DGS can get those preventive maintenance fixes done. I will say DGS has done an excellent job, and the council and its support, the mayor supporting DGS to have those preventive maintenance dollars has been a huge improvement for this DCPS and other locations.
Have you gotten any complaints about health concerns at the Office of Contracts and Procurement?
I do not believe offhand. I believe that we have gotten some individuals have complained about some particular specific areas that might be of a concern, maybe 1 or 2 that I can kind of recall, but ultimately that's in the Marion Berry building where we also are located.
Yeah.
And that building does from time to have minor issues that DGS does an excellent job of addressing. So I can tell you and assure you that I know that my team will go out and proactively look at it if OCP does make a concern or a request.
Sure. What if employees do?
Same as, yes,
Oh.
Actually, more often than not, we actually within our system have a way for any employee to put in, even anonymously, a complaint about it because we didn't want to have a chilling effect.
Yeah.
That people would per se know. We would prefer that people let us know so we can follow up with them. But nonetheless, if OCP employee puts in a notification about an issue or calls our office, 202-442-HELP, then we actually will respond and follow up, make sure it gets to our risk prevention and safety team.
Great. Of course, you know, ORM is charged with ensuring every District of Columbia government agency with 8 or more employees establishes an emergency response plan. However, in your pre-hearing responses, you shared that only 50% of eligible agencies have ERPs as of the beginning of this year, down from 55% last year. Can you share why compliance for this requirement remains so low and the actions that ORM is taking to ensure that agencies are in compliance?
One thing I can say, council members, is that all agencies do have an emergency response plan. not all of them are being updated every year.
Mhm.
And so it is our goal to try and get an updated response plan every year, and that's what we work towards. I've had regular meetings and follow up with my risk prevention and safety team, and I myself will be following up with agencies who have not been able to get it done in the last year. But nonetheless, I can assure you that all of them work, may be old and outdated, but you know, if somebody moves to a new building, we want an updated plan. And
Yeah.
that is what we work towards. So I think we're, my expectation is those numbers will increase significantly, hopefully for this fiscal year.
Do you know how old the ones are that you haven't been getting annually?
Each one depends, right? We had, 80% or 90% within the last couple of years. So we had much, or maybe 70%. All I can say is I know we had higher numbers. So they aren't, 20 years old or anything like that. But I can work to get you specifics on those numbers.
That's helpful, and we can update that question for next year too, so we're getting that data. Can you talk a bit about the purpose of the ERPs and what the risks are when agencies don't have updated plans in place?
So an ERP is very important. It is our response to an emergency, whether that's a fire, whether that's a hurricane, an earthquake, and we want every new staff member to be trained, and all older staff members who've been with those agencies trained. So everyone should know where they're supposed to go in an emergency and how they're supposed to respond depending on that type of emergency, including active threats. And so it's important for everyone to know about an ERP. It should be a part of that orientation and training for their employees. And then those employees should actually follow through to make sure they are educating themselves on ERPs.
Yes, and I would wonder if an agency isn't doing a good job of getting you updated ERPs, if they're subsequently also not doing a good job of orienting staff to them. So
we work regularly with all of our agency risk management representatives on an annual basis to discuss that with them.
Okay.
So we follow up with all the agency risk managers in order to discuss that important topic.
Great. And when you get me the other data, if you could share a full list of agencies who've yet to update their plans, that'd be helpful.
We'll work to get all the information, Councilmember.
Great. In FY23, your agency received 1,705 tort liability claims, but only 391 were settled during that time. I'm glad to see the pothole tort liability claims significantly decreased to 179 in FY23 from 516 in FY22. Can you share the progress that may have led to this improvement?
I think that the weather has a lot to do with it, but I will also, give lots of kudos to our partners at DDOT. They're doing an excellent job. I know the mayor has charged them to fix our roads and our sidewalks, and they are doing a fantastic job of getting that done. And by being faster and more responsive to potholes and other issues, then we're going to have less claims. I will also say last year our weather was good, and as a result, there are going to be less defects in the roadway from the freezing water and expanding and big trucks causing damage, less snow plows going over the roadways and potentially hitting things in the road, not vehicles. So ultimately, I think that has a reduction in our claim count, but also it just comes down to great work by our partner agencies.
What happened to the claims that weren't settled?
Whenever a claim is not settled, sometimes a demand could be for $10 million for a pothole, right? We cannot settle those claims and we'll simply deny it. And then they have the ability to file a lawsuit. So sometimes we work out to resolve it where we can, and where we can't, we deny the claim. Sometimes they're abandoned. We also will just check to make sure that people aren't filing claims in multiple jurisdictions or committing fraud. And through those different processes, we are able to get to the details of it. But ultimately, once we deny a claim, people still have the right to file a lawsuit based on the statute of limitations. And so that's when the Attorney General would step in if a case is filed.
I am concerned about the rise in general property damage and auto bodily injury claims. In your pre-hearing responses, you shared that auto claims rose by 50% in FY23, likely due to increased road activity post-pandemic. That may be true, but it's still concerning to see the numbers. Can you share what your agency is doing to reduce these risks?
We always want to reduce traffic incidents and roadway problems. When we do see trends or we see identify commonly held tort losses, we will end up following up. For instance, we had a claim related to a left turn signal down on Southern Avenue Southeast. We reached out to the Department of Transportation. We actually discussed with them that, you know, there may be an issue here in this pedestrian island. And then they went out and they did more signage in order to reduce it. So wherever we can see a problem, whether it's a trend or even if it's something that can cause an egregious harm, then we'll try to work out talking to our partners in order to address it.
Great.
Tort team does an excellent job. Our tort manager is fantastic, follows up very, very regularly with all the agencies. And all of those tort claims that were filed, we're reaching out to the agencies to get information about it. So it's not us, it's a bi-directional communication with those agencies.
That's great. Is ORM involved with the training of district employees and contractors authorized to operate district vehicles?
We did work on a Vision Zero program, but we're actually working with DCHR as it relates to establishing multiple training mechanisms through their online training modules, defensive driving and other trainings related, you know, driving safely, driving smarter, and distracted driving. So those can be trainings that we would roll out to all of our district government drivers.
So they're not up yet, but you're working on them.
We did have one up and we did have folks take that,
Yeah.
but we're working on these 3 that are even better.
Okay.
That is our hope.
Related, as we heard in public witness testimony today, there are concerns that the How Am I Driving program, which helps ORM track driver performance through complaints and compliments about district government drivers. Can you share the current process and timeline for the investigation of these complaints?
Sure. We reach out, we go into the system at OUC, into their Salesforce system regularly. We've had meetings with OUC. I personally went and attended those meetings in order for us to coordinate better. And we go into their OUC system and we pull down every How's My Driving complaint and we reach out to every agency. And I'm very proud of the team. It is a tough and tedious amount of work, but they have hit every single one and we follow up with every single agency. So I did hear the testimony. It is something that is concerning. It is something that we want to make sure that we're reducing bad driving behavior and we're improving good driving behavior. I will say we have thousands of district vehicles driving on our roads every single day. And from a numerical perspective, it's a very small amount, but that doesn't change the fact that it's important. And so that is why we follow up. You have my commitment that I will be following up again with OUC and I'll be following up with agencies. We reach out to their chiefs of staff when things get very egregious. I will say some of the information, we don't always get all of the details. You know, you don't get the right plate number. You can't always identify which agency it is. So we might have How's My Driving complaints, but we may not be able to identify the right individual. And then in addition to that, even though we follow up, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have definitive data to show that they truly, you know, cut somebody off or did the inappropriate driving that they might have been claimed to have done. That said, we take it seriously. Vision Zero is an important thing for all of us, and we do care and we do follow up.
What is the result of that intervention with the agency generally? I mean, if it's a complaint about driving, do they have to watch the modules you're creating? Like what's the idea?
So if we see a driver who's really doing egregious things, then we will push to make sure that they're going to take a driving course. We will also follow up the agency directors and the staff to say, hey, what are you doing as it relates to discipline? That doesn't mean that we're always going to get the answer or that we're going to always have a solution about it, but we're working towards that. You know, my commitment that I'm going to continue pushing on that along with motor vehicle safety policies for the district.
At the end of the day, does ORM actually have the authority to ensure that bad driving gets better at these agencies?
So these are agency employees, or I do not have the authority to discipline a non-ORM employee. It is incumbent upon the agencies to follow through in the management of their own agency. I couldn't go and to the council if a council driver didn't do the job appropriately. I couldn't necessarily enforce discipline on an employee of the council.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge. And I want to keep thinking about how we solve that.
Happy to work with you
Yeah.
and the committee on it, Councilmember.
Great. In particular, from Commissioner Jacobson, we heard it took ORM an average of 39 days for his complaint to be forwarded to the responsible agency. And with this not within the timeframe that is laid out in the program, right? That's supposed to be 30 days.
I can look into the specifics.
Yeah,
of
let's
that
look into
particular
it.
issue.
Okay. And then what is supposed to be the communication back to the complainant?
Generally, what we're doing is we're following up the agency, we're identifying the particular employee who was driving at the time of the allegation, and we're trying to get that information from them and from the agency, right? Oftentimes it can be, I wasn't there, I didn't do that. So we work to try and get the information. And then if we're able to, get the specifics, then we follow up with the agency and say, what action and what steps are you doing to ensure your employee is following the best standards of driving appropriately.
But then what do you tell the constituent, the complainant, at that point?
Generally, what we'll do is we'll follow up to say, we've heard from and we've responded to the agency. If the agency has responded and we've addressed your particular concern, is what we would say.
Okay.
If generally it's going to 311, it's going through OUC, and then we're pulling that information from OUC and following up internally. So if somebody follows up or we circle back with them, then we get the information to them about what's happened. Typically, we will also, there are many times when we won't even get the details from the individual. Will call 311, but they may not actually leave their contact information or report it beyond this happened. And then we follow up, but we don't necessarily always have the person to talk to in order to respond.
Okay. What would the protocol be when you do have the contact info, then you say, we reached out and this has been addressed, basically?
I will circle back with my risk prevention and safety
Yeah.
team to make sure
Let's
that
see how it's looking. Because, okay, so you had 575 how am I driving complaints about government vehicles in FY '23. Did you see any trends?
Nothing in specific. I mean, it's grown from the prior years during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I think it really depends on the circumstances. We sometimes get compliments, but very few. Nonetheless, when we get the complaints, it could be
I'd love to
anything.
see those compliments.
It would be anything between, somebody was driving too fast, or somebody didn't put on their turn signal, or they didn't let me in, or whatever it could be. It really can be as simple as a minor thing, or a more significant one where somebody was driving really fast and almost hurt me.
Yeah.
That's fewer and far between, but nonetheless, I don't think we have any particular trends.
Okay. The proposed speed limiters amendment act of 2022 would have required the installation of speed governors on all district government non-emergency vehicles. How might this support risk management in the district?
I think that's a very big topic. I have not personally done all of the research on it. I think that reducing risk is part of our mission, and it is something that's very important. But I also want to ensure that we are providing service to the district residents at the level that we want to be providing that service at. And limiters, whether it's somebody driving to Baltimore to help provide for a child with special needs or some other scenario that might occur, those things could have impacts. And I have not looked at all the data, nor have I had an opportunity to really analyze it to give you anything concrete.
Okay. All right. So we'll follow up with you to get the data on all of these complaints. Related to ORM's involvement in traffic safety and liability, I know that residents and council have tried for a very long time to make sure the district's safe accommodations law is followed. The law requires that when a bike lane or sidewalk is closed for construction, an equally safe accommodation free of hazards and debris must be provided. It's especially a problem when DDOT or a contractor doing work on behalf of the DC government isn't following the law. Can you talk about how ORM has been involved in safe accommodations compliance?
I can tell you that through the lawsuit that took place about accommodations related to elections and other processes, ORM has been involved in the task force to ensure that we are talking about appropriate evacuations and providing access. We have often looked to our fantastic partners at ODR, who do an amazing job of advocating and ensuring that we are appropriately following the accessibility rules. And they're within our cluster and a great partner. We work with them regularly. I will say that ORM, if we are seeing that there are people, rights are being violated and we're having to pay lawsuits, then we would definitely be engaged, and we will be engaged. When those partner agencies bring those topics to us, or when we become aware of an issue, we'll reach out to DDOT. We'll also ask DDOT to follow up with its contractors to make sure that their contractors are following the laws and the rules. If it is a third party who is being negligent or causing a harm to a third party, I will say if a claim is filed with our office, we will push that claim to the appropriate third party contractor who's violated the law.
Yeah.
That is the normal process, that they are responsible for their tortious acts, and we will send that to them. We provide great customer service where we notify them of the person and the place to contact, especially for the regular folks that DDOT works with. So we don't just say, you're denied and we're not going to help you. We try and handhold, we try and follow up, and we say, this is the right place and the right people to go to. But it is incumbent upon those third parties to follow the law and the rules. And then of course, DDOT and ORM will notify those third parties when we get awareness of it.
So we're not liable at all when the third party contract is doing work with us?
If we've accepted their work and it was faulty, then we theoretically can become liable. But if it's happened,
Not when it's ongoing?
No.
Okay.
Whether it's utilities, third parties, which often also as a result, while we had that big number of claims, 1,700, which isn't so huge given the size and scope of all the work that district government does, a lot of those might be owned and responsible for third parties. So we'll deny it and say, this was actually the contractor who did the work who caused your harm. And then we will refer them to that right party.
We heard a lot of testimony today about the workers' comp program. That's a core function for your agency. As noted in the pre-hearing responses, all public sector workers' compensation claims are now handled under the Public Sector Workers' Compensation Program at ORM after issues with a third-party administrator who transferred many long overdue claims. Can you provide the total number of transferred claims as well as the number of unresolved transferred claims that PSWCP is still working through?
When we took over in 2018, we had 1,823 open workers' compensation claims. 419 of those were receiving biweekly workers' compensation pay. We've made really great strides. I'm really proud of the team in order to resolve long neglected claims. The program was not so functional, and I am forever grateful to the mayor for her trust and faith in trying to turn the program around, and believe that we have done so. And as of the end of January of this year, we have 697 open workers' compensation claims. And only 161 of them are receiving biweekly payments. Historically, what was happening was individuals were not returning back to work, even though a doctor had said that they should do so. They were not getting medical treatment. They were just sitting and collecting checks. That does not mean that people have really significant injuries. It's something that we care about. It's something that we take every day. We take the time and the energy to support all of our injured workers. We all deserve that right. And so, but we had seen that it was neglected. And when we took over, we updated and we fixed a lot of our processes. We didn't always have great due process. So I heard in the earlier testimony, we have every time we issue something, there's an ability to appeal or to challenge. There are adjudication bodies, whether it's OAH or DC Superior Court, where they can always get an answer, right? It's not like we can make decisions wholly on our own. There are third parties who have oversight over us in the judicial bodies. So just from a high level, that is what we've done. And the vast majority of the ongoing claims, a lot of them are really old claims. And the program now from 2018 to present, we're resolving things. We're getting people medical care and we're really returning them back to work. We're getting them to the right doctors who know how to care for them instead of a general practitioner who doesn't know how to help resolve that work-related injury, and making sure that those individuals are then getting back to work. We're providing good services to them for vocational rehab, so they can help find other jobs if they can no longer do those physical jobs that they were previously doing. So that's some of the numbers. I don't know if that fully answers your question.
Mostly. I mean, what are some of the common questions or concerns that you hear from claimants in your outreach and events?
Yeah, so we've been doing these outreach and listening sessions per the committee's recommendation from last year. And we had already wanted to be doing that in our customer service. We heard from a lot of our individuals about their specific cases. They wanted specific advice about their specific issues. And so the team stayed after and just worked with them one-over-one. But the things that we're hear a lot about are maybe mileage reimbursement, or hear about their timeframes and expectation. And some of it is also about who do they call, right? Where do they go to the next level if their workers' compensation claims examiner, isn't getting back to them right away. And so one of the things that we're working on is about making sure that they have more information about supervisors and the chain of command. As you heard, people have no problem knowing to go to a supervisor or go to the others, but there are some that don't. And so we want to make sure that that information's out there. And those are a lot of the questions and a lot of the things that we're working on providing more support to our injured workers on. We also, we also, added, as I put in my testimony, more orthopedic doctors, right? Trying to find more. There's only so many in the region. And so that is something that you have to look for. I did hear the earlier testimony talking about going to appointments in Maryland. I do want to address that. I will say I'm going to a specific, what's called an additional medical exam, which is kind of an outside opinion. When those individuals are providing those outside opinions, they can't do the regular daily treatment. And as a result, we pick somebody who is not as convenient geographically, because we would rather have doctors available, more geographically available. We pay for the transportation, we do everything that we need to do, and then they can go to a great physician in Baltimore who can give that extra opinion that's necessary. And then that way, we aren't negatively impacting more in the region. If they're in a group of doctors, then that whole group may be precluded from providing regular care on the daily for our injured workers. So that's one of the reasons why finding good physicians in the right areas in order to give the right information. Generally, what we do is we actually go and look, where do our injured workers live? And then we work to provide them with physicians in their geographic region. So if you live in Virginia, we're not looking to provide you with a doctor in Baltimore. We'll look for it in that region. So the team does that in an active, and we'll give them, say, here are 2 or 3, in your area, do you have a preference? So that we always work to do that in order to support our injured workers to make it convenient for them.
You said something I wasn't quite following about a group of doctors being precluded from care. Can you clarify that?
So when we request an additional medical examination, we want that physician to kind of be an independent arbiter, say that original treating physician.
So their partners can't be part of that opinion.
And not only that, but if that's the type of work that they do on behalf of the program, we don't want them treating people. We need it to be separate. It's a very smaller group of physicians.
So you can either give the opinion or do the treatment, but not both?
And correct. And it's continuing medical care no matter what. So if they provide a suggestion about continuing medical care, we will follow that.
Okay.
The other element is there are specialties. So if it's a neurologist, or if it's a thoracic surgeon, or whatever it might be based on that injury, there are only so many people in that type of practice area, and there are only so many people who can then do those specialized opinions in that particular way. So we don't want to create conflicts. And so that is the reason why we do that work. And actually, we pay, like I said, we'll schedule it around their schedule. We do everything that we're supposed to do in order to make sure we're supporting people while they're out of work.
How many claimants attended the December and January events?
I believe we had 26 people who attended, and we sent out 687 invitations.
Okay. And how many claimants who attended have had their claims resolved?
So their individual issues that they raised, I think a lot of them, but this is very complex stuff that's been going on for many years. And so you can't necessarily just resolve the workers' compensation claim instantly. When they have medical conditions that, we can't simply situate. I will say, oftentimes we have situations where we have retirement age claimants and injured workers who have comorbidities. They may have another health condition that means that they can't per se get the treatment to their work-related injury that has complexity around all of these concerns. So it's not a simple, just give me this or solve this. If we
Right.
could, we would. And I'm happy to go over any specifics with you and your fantastic staff anytime on any specifics that I obviously can't discuss in public.
Okay. In your pre-hearing responses, you included the total award amount of medical payments and indemnity payments for 23 and 24. Can you please provide the numbers of claimants paid and the average payment for these years as requested?
I can, Councilmember. So we were following the same process that every agency follows.
Yeah.
So all agencies are asked. So individually specific for our agency, those were our numbers for two minor little incidents that happened
Okay.
in the 10,000 range. So we kind of followed the system that every agency responds from a workers' comp perspective.
Okay.
But the total numbers for the program was about 4.5 for medical costs and around 10.3 million for indemnity payments. So around 14.5 was kind of between medical and indemnity.
Okay.
Yep.
Medical were 5.4 in 2023. Is that right?
4.5.
4.5.
Well,
Okay.
that's actually 2023 to present in 2024.
Okay.
So it was around 3.4 in 2023 for
Mhm.
medical and around 7.7 in indemnity.
Okay. Thank you. Since I've taken over as chair of the committee with oversight of ORM, I've heard some very alarming things about how the public sector worker compensation program operates and the changes that have been put in place since the program was removed from the third-party administrator. We heard testimony today from district employees about their concerns with the program, and you've touched on some of those concerns already, but I want to go through some of those one by one and hear your responses to the concerns. Workers under a private sector act can choose their medical provider. Workers in the public sector cannot. What do you have to say about that?
So as I discussed, we do provide different providers. And if somebody requests a different provider, we go through our panel and we provide them with a different provider. I will say that oftentimes with orthopedic injuries, which is often what we're dealing with, you need somebody with specialized experience for those orthopedic injuries. And so having people who have the expertise in whatever the specialty is really important to getting individuals back to work and getting them healthy. This is so they can get 100% of their paycheck instead of getting 66 2/3 and not putting money away till Social Security. So it is in our mission, it's in our goal to ensure that individuals are going to return to work. And you can see through our successes with our return to work program, we are getting people back to work when those injuries are happening. We've had lots and lots of success related to it. And a lot of that is related to the goal and the effort of making sure that we're supporting the injured worker by getting them to the best specialist. We're going to provide them with the best care in their specific needs. So if they choose their private general practitioner who doesn't really have a great understanding of, specialized wrist fractures or whatever it might be, they're not going to get the best care that they can, and they're not going to return to work as fast and as efficiently.
Well, what about when a public sector worker finds a specialist on their own that is a specialist in that area?
If they bring that to our attention and we can add them to our panel and we find that they are providing excellent care, we're more than happy to do that.
The opinion of a treating physician in the Private Sector Act is given more weight than a hired expert, but that's not true in the Public Sector Act.
Yeah, that is not true. We provide all medical opinions provide great weight, and so ultimately, the medical providers who are providing information about the status of that individual, it is all important to the total care of our injured workers. So I don't believe that is accurate.
Workers in the private sector system can receive benefits for mental health injuries with narrow exceptions. Workers in the public sector system cannot.
I know that some of the advocates have stated that, but you heard just earlier today, one of the testimonies that you heard was somebody that had been accepted for PTSD. So we accept those claims. So I don't know, I'm not 100% about that, but I can say without a doubt that we do provide those types of claims. We do provide for those types of claims.
Insurers under the Private Sector Act obey administrative law judges' orders as a matter of course. ORM does not always do so.
We do follow court orders. We will appeal them. We will challenge them if we find that they are not accurate or they don't follow the law. But ultimately, we follow a robust legal process. When I came into office at ORM, there was not always good due process. There were injured workers who were not always getting responses. The court was actually working to push the agency to respond to things. But that's not the case anymore. We have deadlines, we have timeframes, we've established appropriate due process, and we work really hard to follow all of that to ensure that we're being responsive. But I will say, historically, this program was not successful. But since we've taken over, as you can see, the amount of individuals who are raising these concerns proportionately out of the 1,800 claims that we've had, it's a very small amount. And ultimately, each situation has a story to tell about what we're doing, how we're responding, how we're following the law, following the rules, working with the Office of Administrative Hearings, working with opposing counsel, and working with our injured workers to support them. Ultimately, we want them back to work, and we want them getting the best care they can so they can earn their money like everyone else, all district government employees.
Either side in the private sector can request a hearing when there is a dispute. In the Public Sector Act, the right is subordinated to ORM's discretion. As we heard from our public witnesses today, it can only happen if ORM issues a notice or determination of intent.
Again, we issue our information. There's always a right for any individual to contest or file something stating that the Office of Risk Management has somehow violated their rights or not followed the law or not followed through in anything. So I'm a little confused by the question, but I can say that every one of our letters, every one of our decisions, the appeal rights kind of notify the claimants, the injured workers about how they're supposed to go through that process.
If they file a complaint, where does that go?
If they want to file a formal complaint, they could file it with in DC Superior Court, or they could file it at the Office of Administrative Hearings, depending on the jurisdictional issues. They bring it to my attention and say, no one's being responsive to me, then we work to make sure that we're being responsive. I think that was a historic problem with the agency. I think when I came on, there were what's called a mandamus petition, where you basically are forcing the agency through Superior Court. It's a very significant thing. Like, had never seen that. That doesn't happen. That happened when I first came into office. But the program has been turned around. We have people say, if they reach out and they say, we need a decision or we're waiting something, then the program's working to get that. And if anyone says no decision's been made on my particular matter, I would welcome them to write to me directly, and I'll make sure it gets to the right people in order to do so. But I can say the program has process. We have due process, and we follow through. And the team works really hard. I mean, it is a very difficult job supporting our important employees who've been injured. But it is a tough job, every day, all day. Having people advocate for themselves is important, but it is very tough. They do an excellent job. We respond to everybody. We follow through. So I don't necessarily believe that there's no due process. I think we have that very clearly.
The Compensation Review Board has written about the program, and I quote, even assuming ORM has the authority to adjudicate claims, ORM's solution, a Byzantine web of interlacing regulations, short deadlines, and limited access to a decision maker who might have an appearance of bias, raises serious questions about fundamental fairness and procedural due process. That's not a statement I take lightly. In my committee's budget report last year, I had a number of recommendations for ORM related to the workers' comp program. First, the committee recommended that ORM undertake a comprehensive review of its regulations related to workers' comp and repeal or amend any that are not in the spirit of Comprehensive Merit Personnel Act. Has this been done?
We definitely look at our regulations on a regular basis. So we have done that. We have taken all of the committee's recommendations under consideration. We have worked on all of those. We have followed up about your recommendation around listening sessions. We followed up around subrogation efforts, and we also have reviewed our regulations, and we have some ideas about things that could be improved or changed as it relates to that. I will also note that we have provided to the council a few council sessions ago about a permanent disability piece of legislation in order to ensure that that was allowed. We wanted to make sure that there were appropriate process and that it was fair, equitable, and appropriate in how it was produced. So we have proposed that. I think it ended with prior council sessions. We were more than welcome another conversation on that. I think we've made significant improvements, as you can see from our numbers and from the responsiveness and the willingness to work with our injured workers. The agency is here and ready, and we're happy to work with the committee on that.
The committee also recommended that ORM work to improve workers' compensation claimant satisfaction. You mentioned you've been doing more outreach to claimants. We also recommended providing a list of physicians available to claimants that takes into account their geographic location, provides them with at least 3 options whenever possible, and ensuring that all workers' comp staff receive customer service training reflecting the remedial purpose of the program. Has that been done?
We've definitely done training. We also went follow up to offer other physicians in the geographic region. And then our nursing staff is actually doing proactive support for people with significant injuries. And we've even gone to hospitals in order to support them. We've reached out to lots of our injured workers to provide that type of support in addition to those listening sessions.
Great, thank you. I understand that in many cases, including reasonableness and necessity of medical treatment, ORM is both a party to the proceeding, like the employer, insurer, and the private sector system, and the entity deciding the injured workers' rights, like a judge. Does this not strike you as a conflict of interest?
It's no different than DOES, who administers the unemployment insurance process, right? That is the way that the law was established. I don't think that there's any conflict. We actually have purposeful separations from my decisions that are purposely separated from program decisions when there are appeals to me. So, and we actually have a very high overturn rate, right? So to allege that we're not doing that when we actually are looking and making sure that those decisions are being done accurately is not accurate. And the data shows that we are overturning things when they are not being done appropriately.
As you may be aware, Councilmember Bonds recently introduced a bill that would transfer administration of the Public Workers Comp Program to the Department of Employment Services and otherwise align it with the district's private sector workers' comp program. And this would limit ORM's role in the program to serving as the district's insurance company as opposed to both insurer and adjudicator. What are your thoughts on the proposed transfer of the program?
I think that the program was with the Department of Employment Services when those challenges and issues were occurring. And then it moved over to the Office of Risk Management. And it continued to not be supported and go as well as it should have. And I think that under this administration, we have turned the program around significantly. You heard the number and the statistic about when people call, we answer the phone. So I would urge and recommend, and that was part of our listening sessions. If anyone has a question, if they can't get through to their claims examiner, they can call 202-442-HELP. And our team is ready to answer the phone and provide service to them and get them to the right place in order to have a response. So I think that we have made significant investments with our system. I think we have followed our program is modeled after the federal program, where benefits are actually greater. Cost of living adjustments occur in our program. And I will say that some of our older claims, some individuals have received 30 and 40% cost of living adjustments that would never have occurred in the private sector. I think there's a lot of, the goal of the private sector is in order to work out a settlement and close out that case. That is generally what's happened. That's what insurance companies do in the private sector. Our goal is to get people back to their work. We have a 2-year retention right in the District of Columbia. So you have your job for 2 years if you get injured. And then it is our effort to get you back healthy and back into the job that you were previously in within that 2-year period. That is not the way the private sector works. If the private sector were the program, it would simply be a matter of pay people and they would lose their jobs with the District of Columbia. They would have to be on their own for their medical care and they would pretty much be out there. So it's, I don't think it would probably be better. I, as a district government employee, would prefer the current program modeled after the federal structure than a private sector program.
Thank you for that. Moving on from that topic, I'm sure that does not bother you. Okay, so I am wrapping up now, but I have a few questions about insurance requirements for district contractors and grantees, many of whom are nonprofits. So can you explain some of the changes in insurance coverage requirements for contractors and grantees over the past few years? Specifically, I've heard that umbrella and cyber insurance coverage doubled for providers running housing programs in the district from 22.
What I can say, Councilmember, is that requirements haven't per se changed, but the compliance or the enforcement or the education that these are things that should be done has increased. As ORM has continued to partner with our agencies, we continue to educate them about the need to have insurance. The last thing that we want is for a third party to have a failure that would cause a harm, whether it be to our kids or our vast constituents, and then have the district taxpayers have to pay for that. And so it becomes very challenging. We are very sensitive to the concern related to it. We're sensitive to how the impact it has on our small business community. We are actually undertaking efforts to work with partner agencies to do more education and outreach. And we provide regular trainings to any of our CBE communities to educate them about the need and the benefit for having good insurance for their own business operations, let alone in order to protect the district taxpayers.
So how does it work? For example, I've heard from some organizations that the insurance coverage requirements are the same regardless of the size of the organization and the scale of their work. So for example, an organization serving 100 people under a district contract is required to get the same exact insurance coverage as an organization serving 600 people if the type of work is being done the same. Is that accurate? Is that?
Not exactly.
Okay.
I would welcome, anybody who has a question as it relates to the insurance requirements can always email orm.insurance@dc.gov.
Okay.
We prefer that they go through their contracting officials at OCP, and then we will always work with them. They then reach out to us, and then we help to provide those insurance requirements. So ultimately, we want to make sure that the agencies and OCP is involved because they're the ultimate decision makers on this. At the same time, we do look at it 1-over-1, just because the risk and exposure of a potential contract does not always equate to the cost or the number of employees. You could have 3 employees, but they're taking children in buses across state lines for 10 days, staying over at hotels. You can imagine the risks associated with that, whether it be sexual abuse or a car accident or whatever. And that risk is going to be much higher than people who have 100 employees and they're painting a building, right? So the insurance requirements are, dependent upon the scope of work, the services that the district is asking those third parties to undertake. And then we will issue those requirements when they come to us at the ideation stage in ensuring it goes out with their procurements.
Okay. I think we need to be thinking about it earlier. And I'm someone who's been working a lot on how we pay our nonprofits and how we compensate them for overhead. And we expect nonprofit organizations to do a lot of the on-the-ground work in the District of Columbia. And so we have to make sure we're covering their costs. So I think this is something we need to have a deeper conversation about, and we'll bring you some examples to facilitate that.
Welcome that, Councilmember.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you to you and your committee. Your committee is fantastic.
Thanks so much. This concludes today's public oversight hearing. If you plan on submitting written testimony for the record, please do so by going to the council hearing management system at lims.dccouncil.gov/hearings. The record will close on Tuesday, February 27th at 5:30 p.m. If you'd like to testify at any of our upcoming hearings, you can sign up at the council hearing management system at lims.dccouncil.gov/hearings. The time is 5:28 p.m. and this hearing is adjourned. Thank you.